Rain had a way of turning Boston quiet. It softened the city blurring brick and glass into a gray wash that made the public garden feel like its own small world. The paths shone dark and slick. The grass held a clean, wet smell that reminded me of fresh pages pulled from a printer. "Higher, Dad," Ela called, her sneakers kicking forward as the swing arced out. Her laugh came back on the damp air, bright and sure. I pushed again, hands firm on the chains. The metal was cold, the kind of cold that climbed into your fingertips and stayed there. "If I push any higher, you'll scrape the clouds." "I won't," she said, as if clouds had rules and she knew them. "I'll just borrow one." That was Lila, 6 years old and already convinced the world could be negotiated with. The swing creaked in a steady rhythm, like a metronome keeping time for our stolen hour. Stolen was the right word. My phone sat heavy in my coat pocket, buzzing every few minutes. I did not pull it out. Not yet. I wanted the sound of Lila's laughter to be the loudest thing in my head for as long as I could manage. On Tuesdays, I sometimes got this. A lunch break that stretched a meeting that could be rescheduled, an assistant who did not ask too many questions. Mrs. Alvarez, our downstairs neighbor, watched Lila after school most days, but she had a cardiology appointment this afternoon. I had promised Lila we would make the public garden our secret place, even if the sky looked like it might fold in on itself. A few other parents kept to the edges under umbrellas. Ducks waddled across the path like they owned it. The city moved around us muffled. Lila slowed, dragging her sneakers through the sand beneath the swing. "Can we do the boat now?" I smiled. "You brought your supplies?" She held up a wrinkled sheet of paper. It was one of my printer proofs, folded once, ink smudged at the corner. "This one," she said. "The one with the fancy words." "Those fancy words are someone's book," I told her. But I took it anyway. I could already see the title ghosting through the fold. I should have been horrified that my daughter used my work as crafts. Instead, I felt a quiet tenderness. Books were how I made a living. Books were also how I kept breathing. I set my umbrella against the bench and crouched beside her. The bench slats were damp through my pants. Lila watched my hands like she was studying a lesson she already knew. "Okay," I said. "First fold." She was quick, pinching the paper edges together with serious concentration. "If it's a boat, it has to have a pointy front," she announced. "That's the bow," I said. "That's the wow," she corrected, and gave me a look that suggested I was the one making things up. We folded until the paper became a little boat. The inked words broke apart across the creases, turning sentences into scattered fragments. Lila pressed the bottom flat with both palms and held it up. "See, not sinking." "Nothing sinks on dry land," I said. She climbed down and hopped to a puddle near the path. The water was brown and shiny, the surface trembling with each new drop of rain. She set the boat down with care. For a second it floated perfectly, a tiny white thing carrying stolen paragraphs across a puddle in the middle of Boston. Lila leaned close. "Don't be scared," she whispered. I felt my throat tighten. "It's a boat," I said, but my voice came out softer than I intended. "It's my boat." She watched it drift, satisfied. Then she looked back at me. "You're thinking about work." I blinked. "Am I that obvious? You make your eyebrows like this." She pinched her face into a frown so dramatic I laughed. "Like you're mad at the air?" "Maybe the air deserves it," I said. She trotted back to the swing. "You should stop being mad at the air." I gave her a push, gentler now. My laugh faded as my mind did what it always did when the noise quieted. It went straight to the place that kept me awake. Harbor and Hart Publishing sat a short walk from the Common, all pale stone and polished glass. I had worked there long enough to forget what a normal pace felt like. Last year the board brought in Vivian Hart, and the building seemed to inhale and hold its breath. Her office was on the top floor, all windows and sharp angles. The first time she called me in, she stood by the glass wall, as if she owned the skyline. Navy suit, pearl studs, no handshake. "I've read your spring acquisitions," she said, tapping my folder without opening it. "Tell me why you chose them." I started with the safest answer. She waited until I finished, then asked, "Now, tell me what you're missing." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She noticed weak arguments the way a trained editor noticed a bad sentence, and she cut them clean. When I left her office, my ears were hot and my notes were a mess of arrows and underlines. After that, Mason Reed had leaned over my desk and whispered, "Congratulations, Cole. You met the Winter Queen." I had wanted to laugh. I had also wanted to quit. It was not just her standards. It was the way she made the whole place feel like a test you could fail without knowing the rules. People walked softer. Emails got rewritten 3 times. Even the coffee machine seemed to hiss more quietly. And still the numbers climbed. Authors came back. Agents returned calls. The board praised her vision with the shiny devotion of people who did not have to sit in her meetings. Lila kicked again, asking for the clouds, and I gave her another push. My watch flashed under my sleeve. 11:37. 23 minutes. My stomach tightened with the familiar pull of dread. A day could be perfectly fine until you remembered what waited on the other side of it. Daddy, Lila asked, slowing on the forward arc. Do you have to go back? Yeah, I said, keeping my tone light. But I'll pick you up after school. Mrs. Alvarez will be home by then. She nodded, mouth turning down at the corners. She did not cry. This she treated like weather, something you could dislike but not change. I reached into my pocket and finally pulled out my phone. The screen was dotted with notifications. Most were from Mason. A few were calendar reminders. One was a new email from Vivian's assistant. Subject line, Rourke, noon. That was it. No hello, no please. 2 words, 1 deadline. I stared at it until the letters blurred, then locked the screen again. The rain ticked against my umbrella. Lila's swing creaked slow and patient. You're mad at the air again, she said. I exhaled through my nose. Yeah, I am. She leaned back, letting the swing carry her. Maybe your boss is mad at the air, too. That's possible, I said. It was also possible Vivian Hart did not notice air at all, unless it was getting in the way. The puddle boat bumped the curb of mud and spun in place. Lila watched it like a captain, chin lifted. I felt the tug of the clock again. My umbrella sagged with water. Somewhere beyond the trees, a siren wailed and faded. Lila squinted past me toward the open lawn. Dad, she said, voice changing. Who's that lady? I turned, following her gaze. At first, I saw only the open lawn, glossy with rain. Then a figure cut through it, running hard enough to send dark sprays of water from each step. A woman, tall and fast hair loose and damp against the back of her coat. One hand clutched a pair of high heels. The other was empty, fingers spread, as if she had let go of something and never looked back. Even from a distance, I knew the way she held her shoulders. Vivian Hart. The CEO did not run. She arrived. She entered rooms like a verdict. She did not sprint across public parks in the middle of a Tuesday with wet hair and bare feet. Lila craned her neck. She looks like she forgot her shoes. My mouth went dry. Yeah. Vivian's eyes snapped toward us, sharp as a camera shutter. For a split second, she looked past me, scanning the benches and the path and the clusters of umbrellas like she was counting exits. Then her focus locked on me, and something in her face broke open. Relief. Pure and startled. Ethan, she called, breath catching on my name. She reached us in 3 strides and did not slow down so much as collapse. Her knees hit the bench, her weight shifting, and the next thing I knew, Vivian Hart was on my lap, arms locked around my neck, like she was holding on to the last railing on a sinking ship. Her coat was cold and wet. Her hair smelled faintly of lavender and rainwater. I felt the tremor in her shoulders before she spoke. Please, she whispered, lips near my ear. Say you're with me. Just say it. He's here. My hands moved on their own. One arm wrapped around her back, steadying her. The other stayed low, careful, as if this could still be explained by the laws of the universe. I lowered my voice. Breathe. Her breath shuddered in and out against my throat. Lila stepped closer, eyebrows pinched. Dad, she said, slow and suspicious. Why is the lady sitting on you? Vivian went very still, like a deer that had heard the click of a branch. I swallowed and kept my tone light. Lila, this is Ms. Hart. Vivian's fingers tightened at the sound of her title, as if it reminded her of everything she had to be when she was not running barefoot through a park. And I added quickly, she's playing a game with us. A game. Lila's eyes brightened at once. She did not need the rules. She only needed permission. I nodded. A hiding game. Vivian's gaze flicked up to mine. It was the briefest look, but there was a question in it, and something else too. An awareness of how close she was to me, how my hand rested against the curve of her back under the wet fabric. Lila turned in a circle, scanning the trees. Where is she hiding? She's hiding right here, I said, and forced a small smile. From someone who is looking for her. Lila gasped, delighted. Is it a monster? Vivian made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been edged with panic. Not a monster, I said, just someone who shouldn't find her. I lifted my umbrella a little, angling it so it covered Vivian's head and shoulders. The rain ticked against the fabric above us. Her hair brushed my jaw, damp and silky. Who, I murmured, barely moving my lips. Vivian's answer was a breath. Graham. The name sat between us heavy. Your eyes started. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Former. I did not ask for details. Her grip around my neck said enough. Lila leaned in, studying Vivian's face with the blunt focus only a child can have. You're shaking, she said. Vivian's lashes fluttered. For a moment she seemed ready to snap, to put on that polished, icy expression that could freeze a boardroom. Then she looked at Lila again and something softened. It's just the rain, Vivian said, voice thin. Lila looked up at the umbrella. But you're under Dad's umbrella. Vivian blinked, caught. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her fingers loosened slightly, as if she had realized she was still holding on. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. I kept my gaze outward, scanning the path behind the hedge. A man stood near the far gate, half under a tree that did nothing to stop the rain. He wore a dark suit that did not belong in this weather. No umbrella, no hurry. He turned his head slowly, surveying the park with the lazy certainty of someone who believed the world would arrange itself around him. Then his eyes found us. Even from this distance I could see the change in his posture, the way his spine straightened, as if he had been handed a reason. Vivian's breath hitched. Her body pressed closer to mine without thinking. I felt the quick stutter of her heartbeat through the layers between us. Is that him? I asked. Yes, she whispered. Please. I did not ask what she wanted from me. The shape of her fear was clear. Graham started toward us, walking now measured. His shoes did not slip on the wet path. He moved like a man who had never been told no. Lila turned, following my line of sight. That's the seeker, she announced loud enough that a duck startled. I tightened my arm around Vivian's waist and shifted us slightly, angling her, so her face was less exposed. The gesture was half protection, half performance. Okay, I said to Lila, brighter than I felt. We have to be very convincing. Lila nodded, solemn, like in movies. Exactly. Graham's gaze stayed fixed on us. He was close enough now that I could make out details. Dark hair slicked neatly back. A watch that caught the gray light. A jaw clenched tight enough to show muscle moving beneath skin. He stopped a few feet away, just outside the reach of my umbrella, and looked down at Vivian on my lap. His eyes took in her bare feet, the heels in her hand, the way her body leaned into mine. Then his gaze shifted to Lila, as if she were part of the scenery. Something cold flashed there, and was gone. Vivian, he said, voice smooth as wet stone. There you are. Vivian did not look at him. She stared at the swing chain's knuckles white around her shoes. I lifted my chin. Can I help you? Graham's attention slid to me like a knife blade. You are The question was not about my name. It was about my right to be in this scene. Ethan Cole, I said evenly. We work together. Graham's mouth twitched. Not a smile, more like a reflex. Of course you do. Lila stepped forward, planting herself near my knee like a tiny guard dog. He's my dad, she informed Graham. Graham looked at her again. How nice. Lila squinted. You're not nice. Lila, I warned, but my voice was gentle. She looked up at me. He's making his eyebrows like you do. Before I could respond, Vivian shifted. Her face lifted just enough that her profile was visible. Her voice came out steadier than her hands. Graham, leave. He took a step closer into the edge of the umbrella's shelter. Raindrops slid off his hair and onto his collar. After you disappear, he said softly, I find you sitting on some man's lap in a public park. And a child is here. Do you know how that looks? Vivian's shoulders stiffened. I do not care how it looks. He laughed once quick. You always care how things look. The rain made the moment feel too public and too private at the same time. People passed at a distance, glancing and moving on. Ducks waded through puddles. The city kept breathing. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone calm. She told you to leave. Graham's eyes narrowed. This is between us. Vivian finally looked at him, and the expression in her eyes was not fear. It was exhaustion sharpened by anger. There is no us, she said. Not anymore. His jaw flexed. For a second, his gaze dropped to my arm around her waist. Then he looked back at her face, and the politeness slipped. You replace me fast, he said. Vivian's lips parted as if she might answer, but her voice failed her. I felt the tremor return in her body, subtle but real. I made a decision. I turned my head and pressed a light kiss to Vivian's temple. The contact was brief, careful. Not a claim, not a performance for the crowd, but it did what I needed it to do. It put a line in the wet air between Graham and Vivian. Vivian froze. Her breath caught, then released. I felt her eyes flick to mine. I kept my voice low only for her. Smile, what she whispered. Smile, I repeated, and this time there was a question in my tone that asked for trust without saying the word. Like you're safe. Her lips trembled. Then against all logic, she let out a small laugh. It sounded startled, like it surprised her as much as it surprised me. The sound warmed the space under the umbrella, turning the rain into background noise. Lila clapped once. Good hiding, she said. Graham stared at Vivian's laughter as if it were an insult. His gaze sharpened, calculating. Then it slid to me again. You, he said quietly. I met his eyes and did not blink. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Graham's attention dropped to Vivian's bare feet lingering there in a way that made my skin crawl. He straightened smoothness, returning to his face like a mask being reset. "Fine," he said. "Have it your way." Vivian did not answer. Graham took one step back, then another. Rain darkened the shoulders of his suit. His gaze stayed locked on Vivian until the last moment, then flicked to Lila once more unreadable. He turned and walked away along the path unhurried. I waited until he passed the gate and disappeared behind the trees. Even then, I did not let go. Vivian's body sagged as if she had been holding herself upright with wire. She drew a shaky breath and pressed her forehead into my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were muffled against my coat, and for a second she sounded less like a CEO and more like someone who had been running for a long time. "It's fine," I said. "It is not fine," she corrected, voice tight. "I should not have done that." "You did what you had to," I said. Her fingers loosened at last. She sat up blinking like the world was coming back into focus. Rain clung to her lashes. She looked past me, then back, as if checking that the scene had not shifted. Lila stepped closer, curiosity fully awake now that the danger had moved away. "Are you really my dad's friend?" Vivian's gaze landed on Lila, and something changed again. The hardness around her mouth eased. She tucked damp hair behind her ear, a gesture so ordinary it felt strange coming from her. "Yes," Vivian said, "I am." Lila nodded, satisfied. Then she held out the small paper boat, now soggy at the edges. "This is a good luck boat," she explained. "It does not sink." Vivian hesitated, eyes on the ink smeared across the folds. She took it carefully as if it were fragile for reasons beyond paper. "Thank you," Vivian said. "You can keep it," Lila added, "if you're scared." Vivian swallowed. "I am not," she started, then stopped. Her gaze flicked to me as if she did not know what truth was allowed here. She looked back at Lila. "Sometimes I am." Lila accepted that easily. "Then keep it." Vivian's fingers closed around the boat, gentle. "Okay." Silence settled. The park's tunes crept back in. The squeak of swings, the patter of rain, the low murmur of someone calling for a toddler near the gate. I shifted, slightly aware of the awkwardness I had been ignoring. Vivian was still on my lap, close enough that I could feel heat through cold fabric, close enough that the shape of her breath had become familiar in a few short minutes. Vivian seemed to realize it at the same time. Color rose along her cheekbones. She pulled back quickly, posture straightening, as if she could build a wall in a single motion. She stood. Her bare feet hit the wet ground and she winced. "Your shoes," I said, nodding to her hand. She looked down at the heels as if she had forgotten them. "I cannot run in them," she said, then paused as if the admission of running was itself too much. Lila tugged my sleeve. "Can she push me?" she asked. "She is in the game." Vivian's eyes widened, then softened. "Push you?" "Yes," Lila said, already climbing back onto the swing. "You can be the wind." I glanced at Vivian, offering her an exit with my eyes. She did not take it. She stepped toward the swing set, heels still in her hand, and set the paper boat on the bench beside my umbrella. Then she placed both hands on the swing chains and gave Lila a gentle push. Lila squealed pure joy. Higher. Vivian's mouth curved, small and unwilling at first, then real. The rain slicked her hair against her collar, and she did not seem to care. I watched her with a feeling I could not name, partly disbelief, partly something else. Vivian Hart, who could reduce a room of executives to silence with a look, was standing in the rain pushing my daughter on a swing like it belonged to her life. After a few pushes, Vivian stepped back, breathing steadier. She looked over her shoulder toward the gate, quick and alert. I followed her gaze. No sign of Graham. Still, my muscles stayed tight. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" I asked, keeping my voice low enough that Lila would not hear. Vivian's eyes flicked to mine. There was pride there, and fear under it. "Yes," she said, but it sounded like a rehearsed answer. I picked up my umbrella, shook it once, and stepped closer. "Let me walk you." Her lips parted. "Ethan, you do not have to." "I know," I said. "I want to." She looked at Lila, then at the paper boat on the bench, then back at me. Her fingers tightened around her heels. Finally, she nodded once. Lila pumped her legs to slow herself down. "Are we going on an adventure?" she asked. "We're taking Ms. Hart home," I said. Lila beamed as if home was a magical place. "Okay, but can the boat come too?" Vivian reached for the soggy paper boat and held it carefully in her palm. "Yes," she said to Lila, voice quieter now. "The boat can come." I opened the umbrella wide and angled it to cover all three of us. Lila slipped her small hand into mine without thinking. Vivian hesitated for half a second, then stepped under the umbrella beside us, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. We left the swing set behind and started down the wet path, the three of us moving together through the rain. Lila hopped over puddles like they were stepping stones placed there for her. She kept her hand in mine, but her eyes wandered everywhere, hungry for details. Ducks huddled under a low shrub. A woman jogged past with her hood up, breath clouding. The city smelled like damp leaves and river water, and the faint metallic bite of the Charles on rainy days. Vivian walked close enough that our shoulders brushed when the path narrowed. Her heels dangled from 2 fingers. The paper boat sat cupped in her palm, protected like something living. "Where do you live?" Lila asked, as if this were a normal question to ask a stranger. Vivian blinked, then answered anyway. "Beacon Hill." Lila's face lit up. "That sounds like a place in a story." Vivian's mouth moved as if she might correct her, then she did not. "It does," she said quietly. I watched Vivian out of the corner of my eye. The cold had not left her, but her breathing had steadied. She kept checking the reflections in shop windows and the curve of the street behind us. Every few steps, her posture tried to return to its usual steel spine, and every few steps it failed. "You can let me know if you see him again," I said under my breath. Vivian's answer came too fast. "I will." I did not argue. I knew the sound of someone who had been trained to handle things alone. We reached the edge of the common and crossed toward the older streets. The sidewalks narrowed. Brownstones rose close and heavy, their brick darkened by rain. Gas lamps glowed even in daylight, turning the wet stone steps into polished slate. Lila slowed to stare at a row of window boxes overflowing with winter greenery. "Wow," she whispered, as if the plants might hear. Vivian glanced down at her. "You like it here?" "It looks like a castle street," Lila said. "Like everyone inside has secret books." Vivian's eyes softened. "Some of them probably do." I tried to keep my focus outward, scanning cars that lingered, faces that turned too slowly. Nothing obvious. Still, my shoulders stayed tight beneath my coat. It was a strange thing to feel protective of a woman who could cut my work to ribbons without raising her voice. Vivian stopped in front of a narrow townhouse with a black iron railing and a door painted deep green. A brass knocker sat in the center like a quiet dare. She stared at it for a second before climbing the steps, barefoot, wincing when the cold stone met her skin. "You did not have to walk me," she said, reaching for her key. "I know," I said. Lila peered up at the tall windows. "This is your house." Vivian's fingers paused on the lock. "Yes." "It is huge," Lila breathed. Then, as if remembering manners, she added, "I mean, it is very nice." Vivian looked down at her with a real smile that changed her whole face. "Thank you, Lila." The way Vivian said my daughter's name, careful and gentle, made something twist in my chest. Vivian opened the door. Warm air spilled out, carrying the scent of wood polish and something faintly sweet. The entryway was narrow but welcoming. A runner rug muffled our steps. A bowl of umbrellas sat by the wall, black and neat like soldiers waiting for orders. Vivian glanced at my umbrella, then at her own collection. "You can put it there," she said. I hesitated. The invitation felt larger than an umbrella. Lila did not hesitate at all. She slipped out of her raincoat and stepped inside like she belonged. "It smells good in here," she announced. Vivian's cheeks colored. "It is just the house." "It smells like books," Lila said, delighted. Vivian's gaze flicked to me, something like embarrassment in it. "I have a lot of them." Lila shrugged, as if that was obviously the best kind of person to be. "Good." Vivian took a breath and looked at me. "Would you both like something warm? Hot cocoa?" Lila's head snapped up. "With marshmallows?" Vivian blinked again, then a small laugh escaped her. "Yes, with marshmallows." Lila looked at me with pleading eyes that could have persuaded a jury. "Please, Dad." I should have said no. I should have kept the boundary clean and simple. I should have taken my daughter home and returned to the office with a story no one would believe. Instead, I heard myself answer, "All right, just for a little bit." Vivian's shoulders lowered a fraction, as if she had been holding herself up with tension, and my agreement let her set some of it down. "Come in," she said. Inside, the townhouse opened into a living room that surprised me. It was elegant, yes, but not sterile. A large couch sat in the center, with a throw blanket draped in a way that suggested it had been used, not arranged. The walls held modern art, bold colors against cream paint, but the bookshelves were the true centerpiece. They stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with worn spines and dog-eared paperbacks mixed in with hardcovers. Lila made a small sound of awe and wandered straight to the shelves. Vivian moved toward the kitchen, still holding her heels. She set them by a chair like she did not know what else to do with them. The paper boat went on a side table near the entry, placed carefully, as if it might float away. "Make yourself comfortable," Vivian called, voice steadier now that she was in her own space. I stayed standing for a moment, scanning the room, out of habit, noting the line of windows, the view of the street, the second lock on the door. Then I heard the soft clink of mugs from the kitchen, and the low hum of the kettle, and my body eased just a little. Lila traced a finger along a row of spines. "Do you have the secret garden?" Vivian appeared in the doorway, sleeves pushed up, hair still damp. "I do." Lila pulled the book free with both hands. "This one has flowers on it." Vivian walked closer. "That edition belonged to my mother." The words landed gently, but I saw the way her throat tightened around them. Vivian reached out, took the book from Lila for a second, and ran her thumb along the cover's edge. Then she handed it back. "Be careful," she said. Lila nodded solemnly. "I will." Vivian returned to the kitchen. The smell of chocolate and milk began to fill the room, warm and familiar. It made the rain outside feel farther away. I moved to the side table near the entry and noticed a framed photo that did not fit the rest of the room's polished taste. Vivian was younger in it, hair pulled back, face open in a way I had never seen at work. She stood beside an older woman with the same bright eyes and a smile that looked fearless. Vivian walked back in with 3 mugs on a tray. She followed my gaze without needing it pointed out. "My mother," she said simply. "I am sorry," I replied. Vivian's fingers tightened on the tray. 3 years, she added, as if stating the number made it manageable. She set the mugs down and slid one toward Lila, who immediately blew on it like she had been waiting all day for this moment. "Were you close?" I asked. Vivian's eyes held mine for a heartbeat. She was everything she said. The room was quiet except for the rain tapping against the glass and Lila's careful sipping. Vivian sat on the edge of the couch, posture straight, hands wrapped around her mug as if it anchored her. "My father left when I was 4, she continued. Her voice did not shake, but something old moved beneath it. She built her company from nothing. She did not ask anyone for permission. She made sure I never felt like I was missing something." I nodded slowly. The shape of that life was familiar, different details, same weight. "Single parent," I said. Vivian's gaze dropped to Lila, who was now wearing a faint chocolate mustache. "Yes." Lila looked up proud. "I am very good at cocoa." Vivian's mouth twitched. "I can see that." I reached into my pocket for a napkin, but Vivian beat me to it. She leaned in and wiped Lila's lip with a gentle motion that felt practiced even if it could not have been. Lila did not flinch. She accepted Vivian's touch like she trusted it. Something in Vivian's face changed when she realized Lila was comfortable with her. Not fear, not pride. Something softer like longing that had nowhere to go. Lila returned to her book, turning pages with quiet care. Vivian took a sip of her cocoa and stared into the mug as if it might tell her what to say next. "I did not mean to involve you," she said finally, not looking up. "Or her." "You did not drag yourself into my lap for fun," I answered. Her cheeks flushed again. "God, I cannot believe I did that." "You were scared," I said. Vivian's gaze lifted. "I was." She hesitated, then added, "And you looked safe." The words landed with a strange force. Safe was not a compliment I heard, often not in the context that mattered. It was a word that came from a place deeper than attraction. I kept my voice light because anything else would have felt too sharp. "I have been told I look like I know how to hold an umbrella." Vivian's mouth curved. "You do." She glanced toward the window again, then forced her eyes back to mine. "Graham does not take no." "Well," she said. "That was clear," I replied. Vivian's fingers tightened around the mug. "He is charming when he wants something. People believe him. He listens at first. Then he starts deciding what you should wear, who you should see, what meetings you should attend. It is never loud. It is always reasonable. That is the worst part." I felt my jaw tighten. "How long?" 8 months, she said, as if the number tasted bitter. "Too long." Lila looked up suddenly. "Is Graham a bad guy?" Vivian went still. I answered before Vivian could. "He is someone who made Ms. Hart uncomfortable." Lila considered that, then nodded like a judge. Then he should stop. Vivian let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. "Yes," she murmured. "He should." Lila lifted her book again, already satisfied with the solution. Vivian watched her for a moment. "You are good with her," she said to me, voice low. I shrugged. "She is easy to love." Vivian's gaze lingered on Lila's small hands holding the book. "I always thought I would have children," she said so softly I almost missed it. "It just never happened." The admission sat between us, delicate and honest. I saw how quickly she regretted saying it, how her shoulders tried to pull back into their usual armor. I chose my words carefully. "Work took a lot from you." Vivian's eyes flicked up. "Work gave me a place to put everything I could not fix." I understood that too well. Lila slid off the couch and padded toward the entryway. "Your boat is there," she informed Vivian, pointing at the paper boat on the table. "It is safe in your house." Vivian looked at the boat, then at Lila, then nodded once, as if accepting a promise. "Thank you," she said. Lila returned with the seriousness of a mission. "Do you have more marshmallows?" Vivian's laugh came easier this time. "I do." While Vivian stood and went back to the kitchen, I watched her move through her own space. She was still careful, still controlled, but she was also human in a way I had not seen in the office. She rolled up her sleeves without thinking. She reached for a jar on the top shelf and had to rise on her toes. The moment was ordinary, and that made it intimate. She came back with a small bowl of marshmallows and set it in front of Lila like an offering. Lila picked one up and stared at Vivian. "Do you read voices?" Vivian blinked. "Voices? When you read books," Lila clarified. "Do you do voices for the characters?" Vivian glanced at me, uncertainty in her eyes. I shrugged slightly, letting Lila lead. Lila opened The Secret Garden to the first page and pushed it toward Vivian. "Read," she commanded, very polite and very firm. Vivian hesitated for a breath, then took the book. She cleared her throat like she was about to speak to a room full of investors. Then she began. Her voice shifted on the second sentence, softer, warmer. She tried a different tone for a different character. It was not perfect. It was earnest. Lila's face lit up as if someone had turned on a lamp inside her. I watched Vivian read the rain behind her window, the steam rising from the cocoa, the paper boat waiting on the table, like a small, stubborn thing that refused to sink. My chest felt tight in a way that was not entirely unpleasant. When Vivian reached the end of the page, she looked up almost shy. "Is that acceptable?" Lila nodded with great authority. "Yes, you are very good." Vivian's smile was small but real. "Thank you." The clock in the hall ticked softly. Time moved, but it moved differently in that room. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I did not check it. Eventually, Lila's energy dipped. She yawned, rubbing her eyes with the backs of her hands. "That is my cue," I said, standing. Vivian rose too, setting the book back carefully where Lila had found it. She walked us to the entry, barefoot, still hair now drying in loose waves around her face. At the door, Lila looked up at Vivian. "You can keep the boat forever," she said. "It is yours now." Vivian crouched slightly to meet her height. "I will keep it," she promised. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shone in a way that made my throat tighten again. "Thank you for sharing your dad with me today." Lila considered that, then nodded. "He shares good, mostly." I snorted a laugh before I could stop myself. Vivian's gaze lifted to mine. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt charged, not with romance alone, but with recognition. Two people who knew what it meant to hold your life together with your hands. "Thank you," Vivian said to me quietly. I reached for the doorknob. "Get some rest," I replied. Her lips parted as if she might say more. Then she simply nodded. I opened my umbrella outside. The rain had eased into a softer drizzle. Lila stepped onto the stoop and waved at Vivian with a slow, sleepy hand. Vivian stood in her doorway, framed by warm light. The paper boat sat on the entry table behind her, pale against the darker wood. Lila took my hand again. We started down the steps and onto the slick sidewalk, our footsteps quiet on the wet stone. Behind us, the door closed with a soft click. The street felt colder after the warm light of Vivian's entryway. The drizzle slid down the iron railings and gathered in the seams of the sidewalk. Lila leaned into my side, half asleep, her small hand warm inside my glove. "Coco Lady has a lot of books," she mumbled. "She does," I said. "And she reads voices," Lila added, as if this were the highest form of credibility. "Good voices." I smiled, watching our breath fog in front of us. She surprised me. Lila yawned again, then tightened her grip on my hand as we crossed the street. Headlights smeared across the wet pavement. A taxi hissed past. Boston kept moving, slick and gray. By the time we reached our building, Lila's words were slow and sticky with sleep. I carried her up the stairs, feeling the familiar ache in my shoulder and the familiar gratitude in my chest. She was light now, but she would not always be. I wanted to remember this exact weight, this exact softness of her hair against my neck. Inside, our apartment smelled faintly of detergent and the tomato sauce I had burned last week. I set Lila on the couch and peeled off her damp shoes. She blinked at me, trying to be brave about staying awake. "Brush teeth," I reminded her. She groaned, then marched down the hall with the solemn determination of a child who believed every task was a quest. I followed, turning on the bathroom light. Her cheeks were pink from the cold. She stared at herself in the mirror like she was checking for proof that the day had happened. When she finished, she climbed into bed without argument. That alone told me how tired she was. "Dad," she said as I pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Yeah." "Is Ms. Hart scared all the time?" The question hit me in a place I did not expect. I sat on the edge of her bed, the mattress dipping under my weight. The radiator clicked softly. Rain tapped the window in small, patient beats. "I do not know," I said carefully, "but I think she has had to be strong for a long time." Lila considered that eyes heavy. "Strong people can be scared," she concluded. "Yep," I said. "They can." She nodded once, satisfied, and turned onto her side. Within minutes, her breathing evened out, deep and steady. I stayed there longer than I needed to, listening, letting the sounds settle my nervous system back into place. When I finally stood, my phone buzzed again in my pocket, urgent and persistent. I stepped into the living room and checked it. 3 missed calls from Mason, 1 calendar reminder for a meeting at 10, and a message from Vivian's assistant short enough to feel like a slap. Rourke, noon. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Then I locked it and set the phone face down on the counter like it might calm itself. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water. I did not drink. My thoughts kept drifting back to Beacon Hill. The smell of cocoa, Vivian's bare feet on cold stone, the way her voice changed when she read to Lila, like warmth had been hiding in her lungs the whole time. I opened my laptop and tried to work. Words swam. Sentences refused to behave. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Graham's face in the rain, the way he said Vivian's name like it belonged to him. I went to bed late. I slept in pieces. Morning came sharp and gray. The rain had stopped, but the city still looked washed out like it had been scrubbed too hard. I made Lila oatmeal and cut a banana into it. She ate half, then pushed the bowl away. "Can I wear my purple sweater?" she asked. "It is Wednesday," I said. "Purple sweater day." She grinned and ran to her room. I watched her pull it on, hair sticking up in all directions, still humming from yesterday's excitement. At the school drop-off, she kissed my cheek quickly and sprinted to her line. Then she stopped, turned back, and waved with both hands. "Bye, Dad," she called. "Bye, umbrella." I laughed under my breath and waved back. Then I walked to the subway with my collar turned up against the wind, and my mind already tightening into its work shape. Harbor and Hart was bright inside all white walls and glass partitions that made every movement visible. The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and toner. The elevator reflected my face back at me, tired around the eyes. On my floor, the hum of printers and keyboard taps met me like a familiar tide. People spoke softly, a habit that had set in since Vivian arrived. A few heads turned as I walked to my desk, but no one said anything. We had all learned the value of staying in your own lane. Mason rolled his chair closer the second he saw me. He wore a tie with small sailboats on it, which was either a statement or an accident. With Mason, it was hard to tell. "You vanished yesterday," he said, voice low. "I thought the Winter Queen finally iced you out for good." "I had to handle a kid thing," I replied, keeping my eyes on my screen. Mason leaned in anyway. "That is not what I heard." My fingers paused over the keyboard. "What did you hear?" "That Vivian left the building around lunch. In a rush." Mason's brows lifted. "Vivian Ethan. In a rush. People saw it. People talked." I kept my face neutral. Maybe she had an appointment. Mason watched me for a beat, then smiled slowly, like he had found a loose thread. "Sure, an appointment," with panic. I did not respond. I opened the Rourke file and forced myself into it. Words, context, market comps, anything that was not the memory of Vivian's hands shaking around her heels. At 9:45, Vivian's office door opened. The temperature of the floor seemed to change, subtle but real. Conversations lowered, chairs straightened. The Winter Queen stepped out. Vivian wore a navy dress that fit like it had been tailored on her body that morning. Her hair was smooth again, pinned back in a clean twist. Her makeup was minimal and exact. If I had not seen her barefoot in the rain, I could have believed she had never run anywhere in her life. She walked past my desk without stopping. "Sullivan," she said, then corrected herself without missing a beat. "Cole, I need the Rourke summary on my desk by noon, and the revised numbers for the audiobook projection." Her voice carried just far enough for the nearest desks to hear, just far enough to remind everyone who set the pace. "Yes, Ms. Hart," I said. She did not look at me, or if she did, it was only a flicker I could have imagined. Mason's chair squeaked as he rolled closer again. "She used your actual name," he whispered. "That is basically affection in Vivian language." I shot him a look. He held up both hands in surrender, then wheeled back to his station like nothing happened. I worked. I did not breathe much. At 11:20, I printed the summary, stapled it clean, and walked it to Vivian's office. Her door was open, of course. It was always open. Visibility is control. Vivian sat behind her desk, pen in hand, reviewing something with absolute focus. The window behind her showed the river like a strip of dull steel. I stopped at the edge of the glass and cleared my throat. "Come," she said without looking up. I stepped in and placed the packet on her desk. My fingers brushed the edge of a mug I had not noticed at first. It was a plain ceramic mug, not the sleek glass set she usually used for meetings. Steam rose from it. Vivian's eyes flicked up quick. I recognized the smell before I recognized the drink. Coffee, but not the bitter office brew. Something warmer, softer. Cinnamon maybe, or nutmeg. My coffee. I had never told her how I took it, not once. I had not even told Mason. Vivian's gaze lowered again to the pages. "Sit," she said. I sat in the chair across from her desk, careful not to make it squeak. The glass walls made every sound feel louder. Vivian flipped through my summary pen, tapping lightly at certain lines. My heart beat in my throat, even though I had written it and revised it and checked it twice. That was what she did to people. She made you feel like your best work was still a draft. After a minute, she looked up. "This is better." A simple sentence, high praise in her world. "Thank you," I said. Her pen hovered. "You were right about the pacing issues in Chapter 3. It reads like a second act that forgets its own stakes." She pushed the packet back toward me, tapping a paragraph. "But your fix here is strong. It keeps the voice intact." I blinked. Vivian Hart did not say things were strong. She said things were acceptable. She said things were inadequate. Strong was a new word. "I will make the revisions," I said. She nodded once, then her eyes shifted not to the pages but to my face. The look lasted a fraction longer than necessary. There was a softness around her eyes that vanished quickly, like someone stepping back behind a curtain. "You look tired," she said. It was not concern, not exactly. It was observation, like she was reading a line break. I did not sleep much, I admitted. Vivian's jaw tightened barely. Neither did I. Silence sat between us. The glass wall reflected us like a second scene. Two people in their professional costumes pretending they had not shared a different kind of quiet 24 hours ago. A knock sounded at the open door. Vivian's assistant glanced in holding a tablet. "Ms. Hart, Malcolm Price is on line 1, she said. Vivian's posture shifted instantly. Her shoulders squared. Her expression cooled to the temperature that made board members sit straighter. "Tell him I will call back in 10 minutes, Vivian said, "and clear my 2 o'clock. The assistant nodded and disappeared. Vivian looked at me again. "You can go." I stood, but I did not move right away. The coffee mug sat between us, steaming. "Thank you for the coffee," I said quietly. Vivian's eyes flicked to the mug, then back up. "You drink it that way every morning," she replied as if it were obvious, as if she had always noticed. "Cinnamon. 1 sugar." I felt my brows lift before I could stop it. "You have been watching my coffee." The corner of her mouth moved almost a smile. "I pay attention to my staff," she said, voice dry, then softer, "and to you." The words landed and stayed. I nodded once because anything else felt dangerous. When I left her office, Mason was already waiting, pretending to type while his eyes tracked me. "Well," he asked the second I sat down. "Well, what? Did she turn you into ash?" Mason asked. "Or did she just glare until you apologized for existing?" I kept my voice flat. She liked the summary. Mason leaned closer, eyes widening. She liked something. I opened my laptop. She said it was better. Mason pressed a hand to his chest in mock shock. "Better? Ethan, you have no idea how rare that is. Better is a myth. Better is a unicorn. Go work," I muttered, but I felt my mouth tug into a smile. Mason rolled back again, still grinning. The afternoon moved in a blur of edits and calls. By 4, the floor had relaxed. People laughed a little louder. Someone heated soup in the break room, and the smell of garlic drifted down the hall. I checked my phone between emails and saw no new messages, no unknown numbers, nothing urgent. For the first time all day, my shoulders lowered. At 5:30, as I was packing my bag, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not recognize. "Thank you for yesterday." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. A second message appeared a moment later. "Lila is wonderful." My chest tightened. I typed back before I could overthink it. "She has not stopped talking about your bookshelves." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Then a new message arrived. "I owe you an apology, and I owe her marshmallows." I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. My fingers moved over the keys slower now. "You do not owe us anything." The reply came quickly. "I insist." A pause, then another line. "Would dinner be inappropriate?" No question mark. Just the words, bare and careful, like she could not decide which punctuation might expose her too much. I read it twice. My heart beat once hard against my ribs. Mason walked by with his coat on, waving at me. "You coming?" In a minute, I said, eyes still on the screen. He stopped, noticed my face, and grinned. "That is a look." "Go," I told him. Mason held up 2 fingers like a salute and kept walking. I looked down at my phone again. Vivian's last message waited quiet and unblinking. "Dinner. Inappropriate." I thought of her in the rain, trembling, clinging to me, without pride. I thought of her reading to Lila, trying a different voice, letting herself be imperfect. I thought of her this morning, polished and cold, and the way her eyes had softened for half a second when she said she paid attention to me. I typed with careful hands. "Dinner sounds nice." For a moment, there was nothing. Then 3 dots appeared. Then the response arrived. 7. At my place, if that works. I stared at the words until the office around me faded. My pulse moved into my fingertips again, the same way it had on the bench in the public garden. I typed back, "That works." I slipped the phone into my pocket and stood feeling the strange mixture of steadiness and vertigo that came from stepping into something you could not fully name. Outside the building, the air smelled clean after rain. The sidewalk shone under streetlights. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking toward the subway, already thinking about Lila's face when I told her. She was at Mrs. Alvarez's apartment when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of water and a picture half colored in. Mrs. Alvarez looked tired, but pleased to be home. She patted my arm like I was still a boy in her care. "She was good," Mrs. Alvarez said. "She told me about the boat and the cocoa and the lady with the big house." Lila turned in her chair, eyes bright. "Dad, are we going back to the bookhouse?" I set my bag down and crouched beside her. "We are having dinner there tonight." Her mouth fell open. "Tonight, tonight." "Tonight, tonight," I said. Mrs. Alvarez made a soft sound that could have been amusement. "Eat something real," she told me, then waved us out as Lila grabbed her backpack and stuffed her picture inside like it was important evidence. The sky had cleared to a thin, cold blue by the time we stepped outside. The sidewalks were still wet. The air had that sharp Boston bite that slid into your lungs and made you feel awake whether you wanted to or not. Lila skipped beside me, her purple sweater visible beneath her coat when it flapped open. "Do you think she will read more voices?" she asked. "I do not know," I said. "Do you plan to request it?" Lila's grin was wicked. "Yes." We stopped at a corner store for a small bouquet of white flowers because showing up empty-handed felt wrong, even if Vivian had not asked for anything. Lila chose them with serious focus, as if she were selecting tools for a job. "These ones look brave," she said, pointing. I paid and tucked the bouquet under my arm. Lila held my hand again as we walked to the subway, her fingers warm through my glove. At Beacon Hill, the brownstones rose close and steady, their windows glowing with warm light. Vivian's townhouse looked the same as it had yesterday, but the street did not feel the same. Yesterday I had stood on her stoop with rain in my hair and a sense of unreality in my chest. Tonight I stood there with flowers and a child at my side, and the dull throb of nervousness behind my ribs. Lila climbed the steps first and knocked before I could stop her. The door opened almost immediately, as if Vivian had been listening for our footsteps. She looked different, not in a dramatic way, in a human way. Her hair was down, still smooth, but looser, falling over one shoulder. She wore a soft sweater and dark pants. No jewelry except a simple watch. Her feet were in thick socks, and for some reason that detail made my mind stall. Vivian Hart in socks did not belong in the same category as Vivian Hart behind a boardroom table. Her eyes went to Lila first. "You came," Vivian said. Lila nodded solemnly. "We came. Dad brought brave flowers." Vivian blinked, then her gaze landed on the bouquet under my arm. Color warmed her cheeks. "Thank you," she said, voice quiet. I handed them to her. Our fingers brushed. Her hand was warmer than yesterday. "I was not sure what you liked," I admitted. Vivian looked at the flowers as if they were something fragile. "No one brings me flowers," she said, then seemed to regret the honesty. She stepped back. "Come in. Both of you. It is cold out there." Lila rushed inside like she had been invited to a museum where touching was allowed. She shrugged off her coat and headed straight for the shelves. "Your boat is still here," she announced, pointing at the entry table. Vivian glanced at it, then nodded once. "It is." I hung our coats, aware of how natural Vivian's space was starting to feel after only one visit. The same warm scent of wood and cocoa lingered, mixed now with something savory. Garlic maybe, butter, something simmering in a pot. Vivian closed the door and turned. For a moment her eyes held mine, and something passed between us that felt like a question neither of us wanted to ask out loud. She cleared her throat. "Dinner is almost ready." "What are you making?" Lila asked, already pulling a book off the shelf. Vivian's mouth curved. "Pasta, with a simple sauce." Lila considered that. "Will there be bread?" Vivian's eyes widened slightly. Then she laughed under her breath. "Yes, there will be bread." Lila looked satisfied and trotted toward the kitchen like she knew the way. Vivian turned to me as we followed. "You did not have to bring anything," she said again, softer. "I know," I replied. Her gaze flicked to my face. "You keep saying that." "It is true," I said, and I still wanted to. Something eased in her expression. She turned away first, leading us into the kitchen. The kitchen was bright and lived in. A pot bubbled softly on the stove. A cutting board held chopped parsley. The table was set for three with plain white plates and cloth napkins folded neatly, not fancy, just careful. Lila climbed onto a chair and sniffed the air dramatically. It smells like a restaurant. Vivian made a small sound that could have been pride. It is only pasta. That is restaurant food, Lila insisted. I moved to the counter. Do you need help? Vivian hesitated, then handed me a wooden spoon. Stir, she said, as if she were giving me a task in a meeting. Then her eyes softened. Please. I stirred. The sauce thickened, glossy and red, clinging to the spoon. The steam warmed my face. Vivian moved around me, pulling a loaf of bread from the oven, setting a bowl of salad on the table. She worked with the quiet efficiency of someone used to being in charge, but there was a nervousness under it, a slight rush. A plate adjusted twice, her hand hovering before she decided where to put the pepper. Lila watched her with bright, assessing eyes. You are different today, Lila said suddenly. Vivian froze with the bread knife in her hand. Different how? You look softer, Lila said, as if describing a blanket. Vivian's cheeks flushed. She glanced at me, then back at Lila. I am at home, she said carefully. Lila nodded, like that explained everything. At school I look like this, she said, and she made her face serious and stiff. Vivian's laugh came out genuine this time. That is very intimidating, she said. I know, Lila replied, dead serious, and I had to turn my head so Vivian would not see my grin. We sat down to eat. The pasta was good, better than good. Simple, warm, the kind of meal that made you feel grounded. Lila ate with the focus of someone who had made an important decision about liking something. She dipped bread into sauce and sighed happily. Vivian watched, her eyes soft around the edges. She asked Lila questions that were simple but specific, the kind of questions that told a child she was being taken seriously. What is your favorite part of a school? Vivian asked. Recess, Lila said immediately. Vivian nodded, as if she expected nothing else. Why recess? Because it has swings, Lila said, and I can run fast. And also because the teacher is not talking. Vivian's mouth twitched. That last reason makes sense. I ate slowly, listening. The sound of forks on plates filled the small pauses. Vivian's shoulders were less rigid than they were at work. Her hands stayed wrapped around her glass of water, between bites, but she was present here, not performing. Lila went on about a class project involving paper and glue and a poster board that had apparently ruined someone's life. Vivian listened as if this was a business proposal worth considering. She asked what colors Lila chose, why those colors, how long it took. Lila glowed under the attention. Halfway through dinner, Lila looked at Vivian and asked, Do you have a kid bed here? Vivian blinked. A kid bed. For when kids are tired, Lila clarified. Like when I sleep at my cousin's house. She has a kid bed. Vivian's fingers tightened around her fork. I do not, she said. Then after a beat, but I have a couch. It is soft. Lila nodded, satisfied with that compromise. Okay. After dinner, Lila insisted on helping clear the table. She carried napkins like they were heavy cargo. Vivian washed dishes. I dried them. We moved around each other in the small kitchen, careful at first, then easier. Vivian's elbow brushed my arm once as she reached for a plate. She went still for a fraction of a second, then kept washing. I kept drying. The water ran hot. The window over the sink reflected our shapes. Outside, the streetlights made the wet sidewalks look like dark glass. Lila climbed onto the couch with the secret garden and curled into the corner. She held the book open, but her eyes kept drifting shut. Vivian walked over and pulled a throw blanket from the back of the couch. She hesitated, then draped it over Lila with a gentleness that felt instinctive. Lila murmured something, then curled tighter, her face relaxing as sleep took her. Vivian stood there for a moment looking down at her. Her expression was careful, as if she did not trust what she felt. She can fall asleep anywhere, I said quietly. Vivian's voice was barely above a whisper. She is safe with you. I swallowed. I try. Vivian's gaze lifted to mine. The living room felt smaller, with the kitchen lights dimmed, and the only brightness coming from a lamp near the shelves. The air smelled faintly of tomato and soap and cocoa that had soaked into the walls. She gestured toward the patio door. Would you like some air? She asked. Just for a minute. I nodded. We stepped outside. The patio was small, enclosed by brick with a couple of chairs and a table. The air was cold and clean. The city noise was distant, softened by the buildings. Vivian wrapped her arms around herself, then seemed to realize the gesture and dropped them, trying to look composed. She did not succeed. I did not know what to make, she said. You did fine, I replied. Bastolied. She gave a short laugh. Fine is not a word I enjoy. I noticed, I said. Vivian looked at me, and there was the faintest flicker of amusement in her eyes. Then it faded into something more serious. At work, she said slowly, I am not like this. I noticed that too, I said. Vivian's fingers traced the edge of the patio table. People think I am cold, she continued. Are you? I asked. Her jaw tightened. I became what I needed to become. The words sounded practiced, like she had said them to herself in mirrors and elevators and board meetings. I waited. Vivian took a breath. When my mother died, the company she built was not stable. The board was nervous. Investors were nervous. Everyone had advice. Most of it was the kind that sounded polite and tasted like poison. She looked down at her hands. They wanted someone else, someone older, someone safer. They smiled at me and asked if I was up for the job, like it was a compliment, like it was a joke. I felt my hands curl into fists in my pockets. So you made them stop smiling, I said. Vivian's gaze lifted sharp and tired. Yes. A pause. The cold air pressed against my cheeks. It worked, I added. Harbor and heart is stronger. Everyone knows it. Vivian's mouth twisted. People respect me, she said. They do not know me. I did not answer right away. I thought of her laughing under my umbrella, her hands shaking around her shoes, her voice reading to Lila. I know you, I said quietly. Vivian's eyes held mine. Something moved there, uncertain and hopeful at the same time. She looked away first toward the brick wall, as if the mortar lines could give her instructions. You should not, she said. It is not wise. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Wise is not the category we are in. Vivian's lips parted. Her eyes came back to mine, and for a second she looked like she might step back inside and lock the door and pretend none of this existed. Instead, she stepped closer. You are my employee, she said, voice low. I know, I replied. And you have Lila. Vivian added softer, as if her name belonged to a sacred place. I know, I said again. Vivian's throat worked. And I am... She started, then stopped. She shook her head once, frustrated. I am complicated. I studied her face in the dim patio light. The lines of control were still there, but tonight they were thinner. So am I said. Her eyes searched mine. Why are you here? She asked, not accusing, just honest. I answered the truth that sat closest to the surface. Because you asked, and because Lila likes you, and because yesterday you looked like you needed someone to stand between you and the world. Vivian's breath caught. I did. Silence. The city hummed somewhere beyond the brick. A car passed, tires whispering on wet pavement. Vivian's hand lifted slow, as if she were unsure she had the right. Her fingers touched my cheek, lightly testing the reality of it. Her skin was warm. Her touch was careful, but it carried weight. My body went still. It had been a long time since anyone touched my face like that. Ethan, she said, barely a sound. I did not move away. Vivian's eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. Permission asked without words. I nodded once. She kissed me. It was gentle at first, a question more than an answer. Then she leaned in closer, and the question became something steadier. Her hand stayed on my cheek thumb, resting near the corner of my mouth. I felt the softness of her sweater sleeve against my wrist when my hand found her waist. When we pulled apart, her breath was uneven. Her eyes were wide, like she had stepped into a room she did not know how to leave. I did not plan that, she whispered. Neither did I said. My voice sounded rough to my own ears. Vivian's gaze dropped. She let out a short, shaky laugh that held no humor. This is a terrible idea, she said. Probably, I agreed. She looked back up, and the honesty in her expression made my chest ache. I do not want to hurt you, she said. Or her. I swallowed. I do not want that either. Vivian stepped back half a pace, as if distance could help her think. Her arms wrapped around herself again, but this time she did not correct it. We have to be careful, she said. Yes, I replied. Her eyes held mine a moment longer. Then she nodded once, decisive. Okay, she said, and the words sounded like a promise she intended to keep. We went back inside. Lila was asleep on the couch, the book open on her chest, her mouth slightly open in a way that made her look younger. Vivian moved to close the book carefully and set it on the side table. She tucked the blanket up around Lila's shoulders, then stood, hands hovering, unsure what to do with them. I stepped closer. I should take her home, I said. Vivian nodded, then surprised me by reaching for Lila's small backpack and placing it in my hand. Her fingers brushed mine again. This time neither of us pulled back too quickly. I lifted Lila gently. She stirred, then relaxed against my shoulder with a sleepy sigh. Vivian walked us to the door. In the entryway, the paper boat sat on the table where Lila had left it, edges dried and curled, still holding its shape. Lila's voice came soft against my neck. Night, she mumbled. Vivian's face softened. Good night, Lila, she whispered. I opened the door. Cold air spilled in. For a moment, Vivian stood in the warm light behind us, hands at her sides, posture held together by will. Her gaze met mine, and the look there was not the Winter Queen. It was simply Vivian, a woman trying to figure out where to place her fear. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded once. "Good night," I replied. "Second," I replied. Then I stepped out into the cold with my daughter in my arms and the taste of cocoa and basil and something else still on my mouth. Lila slept all the way home, her cheek pressed into my shoulder, her breath warm through my coat. The city lights blurred on the wet pavement. I kept my umbrella angled over her head, even though the sky had cleared, because it felt like the right shape of care. At our building, I climbed the stairs slowly, listening to the small sounds she made when she shifted. I laid her in bed and tucked the blanket around her like I always did. Her fingers curled once, then relaxed. In the kitchen, the sink light made the apartment look smaller. I rinsed my hands, stared at my reflection in the dark window, and tried to put my thoughts back where they belonged. It did not work. My mind kept returning to Vivian on her patio, to her hand on my cheek, to the way she had said Lila's name like it mattered. My phone buzzed close to midnight. A text from Vivian, "Home safe." I read it twice. The words were simple, but they held an awareness that made my chest tighten. I typed back, "Yes, thank you for dinner." A pause, then her reply, "Good night, Ethan." I stared at my name until the screen dimmed. Work the next morning felt like stepping into a different skin. Harbor and Hart gleamed with its usual calm brightness. The lobby smelled of coffee and clean stone. People moved with purpose, eyes on screens, hands on lanyards. Vivian was already in a meeting when I arrived. I saw her through the glass wall of the conference room. Posture, perfect face, composed hands folded on the table. If I had not felt her fingers on my cheek the night before, I might have believed she was made of something colder than bone. Mason intercepted me at my desk. "You look like you slept," he said. "I slept," I lied. He leaned in, voice lowered. "Did you and Vivian have an actual human dinner?" I opened my laptop. We ate food. Mason's eyes widened. Food, at her house. I kept my gaze on the screen. My kid was there. "Of course your kid was there," Mason said. "Your kid is the key to Vivian Hart's secret heart. Everyone knows that." "No one knows that," I murmured. Mason smiled like he had already filed the information away for later use. Vivian kept her distance at work. She addressed me the same way she addressed everyone, crisp and exact. She did not meet my eyes for longer than necessary. Once in the hallway, our shoulders brushed as we passed. She did not stop, neither did I. But the contact stayed on my skin long after. That week moved fast. Editing meetings, agent calls, a tense negotiation over a thriller manuscript that everyone wanted and no one wanted to overpay for. I made it to Lila's school pickup on time 3 days in a row and felt like I had won something. On Friday, Lila came out of her classroom carrying a paper crown and a stack of drawings. "Dad," she announced, "I am a queen." "Clearly," I said, taking her backpack. She leaned closer. "Is Ms. Hart a queen too?" I hesitated, then chose honesty shaped for a child. "She is a boss." Lila nodded as if those were similar species. "Queens have rules," she said. "Bosses have rules." "That sounds accurate," I replied. Lila kicked a pebble along the sidewalk. "Can we see her again?" I felt the familiar pull of responsibility, the careful line I tried to keep between work and home. "Maybe," I said. Lila accepted that with a small smile, like she already believed maybe meant yes. We saw Vivian again on Saturday. Not at her townhouse, not at the office, not in any place that belonged to either of us. We met at the New England Aquarium because Lila loved penguins with the fierce devotion of a true fan, and Vivian had said she had not been there since she was a kid. Vivian arrived in a dark coat and a knit cap pulled low. No heels, she blended in almost. Except she still carried herself like a person used to being watched. Lila ran to her immediately. "You came," she said, as if Vivian had promised something important. Vivian crouched and held out a small paper bag. "For you," she said. Lila reached in and pulled out a penguin keychain. She gasped. "It is perfect." Vivian's smile was small and real. I thought it looked determined. Lila clipped it to her backpack like a medal. Inside, the aquarium smelled of salt and damp air and popcorn from a nearby stand. The lighting turned everything blue. Fish glided past the glass silent and indifferent. Lila pressed her hands to the tank and tracked a sea turtle with wide eyes. Vivian stood beside me. Our shoulders were close but not touching. Her attention stayed on Lila. I watched the way Vivian watched her, a mix of softness and hunger, like she was trying to learn a language she had always wanted to speak. "She likes you," I said quietly. Vivian did not look away from the tank. "I like her," she replied. The admission was plain, almost stark. Lila grabbed Vivian's sleeve. "Come see the penguins," she demanded. Vivian followed, and the three of us moved through the dim rooms together. At the penguin exhibit, the birds waddled and dove, sleek and comic at the same time. Lila laughed so hard she snorted, then clapped a hand over her mouth, embarrassed. Vivian leaned down. "Do not hide it," she said softly. "Laughing is allowed." Lila stared, then nodded as if she had been granted a license. On the walk back outside, cold air hit our faces. Vivian's cheeks were pink from the indoor warmth. She looked younger than she did under office lights. Lila tugged my hand. "Can we get cocoa?" she asked. Vivian glanced at me. "There is a place on Charles Street," she said. "They make it thick." We went. The cafe smelled of espresso and cinnamon. We sat by the window. Lila drank cocoa with whipped cream and got a fresh mustache. Vivian reached for a napkin, paused, then wiped Lila's lip gently. Lila did not flinch. She leaned into it. I watched Vivian's face change for a second, her eyes going distant. "You are thinking about your mom," I said quietly. Vivian's gaze flicked to mine, surprised. Then she nodded once. "She used to bring me here," she admitted, "when I was small enough to believe sugar fixed everything." "It helps," I said. Vivian's mouth curved. "Sometimes." Lila set her cup down with a decisive thunk. "Can we go to the garden?" she asked. "The swing garden." "The public garden," I corrected. Lila shrugged. "The swing garden." Vivian's gaze held mine for a beat. I saw the question there, the one neither of us said out loud. "Is this too much? Is this a line we cannot step over?" I answered with a small nod. We walked to the public garden. The paths were dry now. The trees still held leftover droplets, and when the wind moved through them, it sounded like a soft shiver. Lila ran ahead to the swings, and I followed with Vivian at my side. She moved a little closer than she had at the aquarium, close enough that her coat sleeve brushed mine. Lila climbed onto the swing and looked between us. "You both push," she declared. Vivian blinked. "Both." Lila nodded. "2 pushes is higher." I took one chain. Vivian took the other. Our hands gripped the metal. We pushed together. The swing rose. Lila's laugh spilled out loud and clean. For a second it felt like something ordinary. 2 adults, 1 child, a cold day in Boston. It should have been simple. It was not. When Lila ran off to chase a squirrel, Vivian spoke without looking at me. At work, she said we should keep it quiet. "I know," I replied. Vivian's fingers tightened on the swing chain. "It is not just gossip." "I know," I said again. She turned, then eyes sharp. "And Graham." The name cut through the air. I watched the path beyond the swings. "Has he contacted you?" I asked. Vivian's mouth tightened. "Texts, voicemails. He changes numbers." She swallowed. "Nothing he could be arrested for." My jaw clenched. "Blocking does not work if he keeps coming back." "No," she agreed, and there was a tired bitterness in her tone that made me want to put my hand on her shoulder. I did not. The park was full of people. The city was full of eyes. Lila ran back, cheeks flushed. "Push again," she demanded. We pushed. The swing climbed. Lila lifted her arms like she was flying. Vivian watched her, and her expression softened in spite of herself. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a rhythm that felt almost believable. Vivian came to Lila's school art show and stood at the back of the room, hands clasped, eyes bright, as Lila explained her paper collage with fierce confidence. Vivian did not speak much to the other parents. She stayed close to me, close to Lila, close to the wall, as if she preferred having something solid behind her. I brought Lila to Vivian's townhouse on quiet evenings. Vivian would cook simple meals, then sit on the couch with The Secret Garden or a different book and read aloud while Lila leaned against her side. I would sit in the armchair, pretending to work on edits while listening to Vivian's voice fill the room. Sometimes she would look up mid-sentence and catch my eye. In those moments, her expression held a softness that made my stomach dip. At work, we maintained distance. Vivian ran meetings with her usual precision. I delivered summaries, negotiated bids, soothed authors, rewrote blurbs, revised cover copy. We spoke like colleagues. Sometimes her gaze would catch mine through a glass wall and linger a fraction too long. Then she would look away as if she had touched something hot. Mason noticed everything and said almost nothing, which was how I knew he was enjoying himself. Then the first problem hit. It started with a debut fantasy manuscript called Silver Orchard. I had been courting the agent for weeks, building trust, promising a marketing plan I believed in. The author had a voice like a bell. The book had that rare combination of heart and momentum. Vivian agreed it was worth a strong offer. We prepared our bid. I sent the numbers to Vivian. She approved them. I called the agent and made the offer. The agent's silence on the line lasted one beat too long. I appreciate it, she said carefully. But Redwood Crown just came in higher. My stomach tightened. How much higher? She told me. The number was not just higher, it was exact. It beat us by a clean, insulting margin, as if someone had measured our bid and stepped over it on purpose. I hung up and walked to Vivian's office. Vivian listened without interrupting, face unreadable. When I finished, she asked one question. Did anyone outside senior staff know our number? No, I said, not unless someone talked. Vivian nodded, slowly, eyes narrowing. We move on, she said. We do not flinch. We moved on. We pursued other projects. We told ourselves Redwood Crown had deep pockets. A week later, it happened again with a non-fiction proposal that should have been ours. A journalist with a strong platform. A topic that fit our list perfectly. We were ready. We were confident. Redwood Crown outbid us by the same kind of margin. After the second loss, Vivian called me into her office and closed the door, which she almost never did. The click of the latch sounded louder than it should have. She stood by the window back to me. This is not normal, she said. No, I replied. Vivian turned. Her eyes were cold, but her voice was controlled. Someone knows our moves. My pulse ticked faster. You think it is internal. Vivian did not answer right away. She walked to her desk and opened a drawer. From it, she pulled a small notebook and flipped to a page filled with dates and titles, written in her precise handwriting. These started after the park, she said quietly. I felt the hair on my arms rise. You think Graham is involved? Vivian's jaw tightened. He knows people, she said. He likes to collect them. She looked down at the notebook, then up at me. He has friends at Redwood Crown? I held her gaze. If he is doing this, he is not just harassing you. He is trying to hurt you where it matters. Vivian's expression flickered. Something like fear crossed it, then got shoved down. I know, she said. She opened her laptop and typed quickly. I am bringing in an outside consultant, she added. Security. Cyber, I said, already thinking through weak points. Vivian nodded once. Everything. A knock sounded at the door. Vivian's assistant poked her head in, eyes cautious. Ms. Hart Malcolm Price moved the quarterly review up. The board wants a briefing on acquisitions performance. Vivian's face went still. When? This week, her assistant said. Thursday at 9. Vivian's gaze shifted to me. The look was brief but loaded. Not panic, not defeat. Calculation. Send them a confirmation, Vivian told her assistant, and clear my morning. The assistant nodded and disappeared. Vivian exhaled slowly through her nose, then picked up her phone and typed a message. She did not show me the screen, but I saw her thumb move with quick certainty. She set the phone down and looked at me. Finish your reports, she said, voice returning to its work temperature, and keep your notes tight. I nodded. I will. As I stood to leave, my eyes landed on the entry table in her office, a small surface usually reserved for neatly stacked contracts. Sitting there, slightly out of place among the polished objects, was a paper boat. Its edges were curled. The ink across its folds had faded, but it still held its shape. Vivian followed my gaze, then looked away as if she had been caught holding something personal. I did not comment. I opened the door and stepped back into the bright hallway where everyone moved like nothing was wrong, where glass walls reflected calm faces. At my desk, I pulled up the acquisition files and began tightening every detail, every date, every number, as if careful work could keep the floor from shifting under us. Thursday morning arrived with a hard, clear cold that made the city feel sharpened. The sidewalks glittered with leftover frost in the seams. I walked into Harbor in Hart early coat still holding the bite of outside air and found the building already awake. The boardroom sat on the top floor, a long glass box with a view that made the Charles look like a strip of slate. Inside, the heat was steady and dry. The table was polished enough to reflect the overhead lights. A carafe of coffee steamed near a stack of water glasses that had not been touched yet. Vivian stood at the far end of the room, hands resting lightly on the back of a chair. She wore black, simple and exact, hair pinned back. A small gold ring on one finger, the only softness. She looked like she belonged to the view. When she noticed me, she did not smile. She did not need to. Her gaze held mine for a second longer than it should have, then shifted past me to the door as Malcolm Price and two other board members entered. Malcolm was older, silver hair cut short, eyes that never seemed to blink. He shook hands without warmth and sat with a slow confidence that made the chair look smaller. Vivian, he said as if she were a report heading. Let's begin. She took her seat. I sat 2 chairs down close enough to speak, if asked far enough to stay in my lane. Mason sat across from me, pen-poised expression, too calm. He tapped his foot under the table in a rhythm that told me he was paying attention. Vivian opened a folder. The paper made a soft snap as it straightened. "We have a problem," she said, voice steady and level. "Someone has been feeding our acquisition targets and bid ranges to Redwood Crown." No preamble, no easing into it. Her words landed like cold water. One of the board members, a woman with a silk scarf tucked into her blazer, leaned forward. "That is a serious accusation." "It is a serious situation," Vivian replied. "We have lost 3 competitive offers in 5 weeks. Each time Redwood Crown outbid us by a margin that suggests they knew our ceiling." Malcolm's fingers steepled. Could this be coincidence? Market pressures? An aggressive competitor? Vivian slid a sheet across the table. "Here are the titles dates and our internal bid approvals. Here are Redwood's winning numbers obtained through agent disclosures. Look at the margins." The board members studied the paper, the room filled with the small sounds of breathing and page turns. Mason's foot stopped tapping. Malcolm's eyes lifted. "This started recently." "Yes," Vivian said. She did not look at me. She did not need to. "We have had competition before. This is different." A board member cleared his throat. "What are you proposing?" Vivian's posture remained composed, but I saw the tension in her hands as her thumb rubbed the edge of the folder. "First, we tighten access. Acquisition discussions and bid ceilings stay with senior staff only. No forwarding, no printing unless necessary. Second, we bring in outside security." The woman with the scarf frowned. "Security for a publishing house. Security for a company that is being undermined," Vivian said. Her voice held no irritation, only certainty. "This includes cyber review, email access, document permissions, vendor login audits." Malcolm leaned back slightly. "You have already selected someone." "Yes," Vivian said. She reached for another folder and opened it. "Diana Shaw, former Federal Cyber Task Force. She consults for private firms now." The name moved around the table, a few nods, a few skeptical looks. Malcolm's gaze fixed on Vivian. "And your theory on motive?" Vivian paused for half a beat. In that pause, I felt her choice. What to disclose, what to protect. "It may be an external actor with a personal grievance," she said. "I am not prepared to speculate without proof. Diana will find the entry point. Once we have facts, we act." The board accepted that more easily than I expected. Or maybe they accepted Vivian's calm. She made the word act sound like a law of physics. Malcolm nodded once. "Proceed. Bring us preliminary findings within 10 days. Vivian's eyes did not widen. She did not show relief. She simply inclined her head. "You will have them." The meeting ended quickly after that. Numbers were discussed, timelines set, quiet reminders about brand stability and investor confidence. Vivian absorbed it all with her face composed, her voice precise. When the board members stood to leave, Malcolm paused at the door. "Vivian," he said, lowering his voice, "this cannot become a distraction." Vivian met his gaze. "It will not." Malcolm studied her for a moment, then left. The glass door closed with a soft thud. The room stayed still after they were gone. Mason let out a breath through his teeth. "Well," he murmured, "that was a cheerful way to start the day." Vivian gathered her papers with clean efficiency. "Back to work," she said. Mason stood, gave me a look that asked questions without words, then walked out. I stayed seated until Vivian looked at me. "Ethan," she said, voice lower now that we were alone, "come with me." Her office door closed behind us, and the click sounded louder than it had any right to. Vivian crossed the room and stood by her window, hands clasped behind her back. The skyline sat gray and cold beyond the glass. For a moment, she did not speak. I could see her controlling her breathing, keeping herself from slipping. "Personal grievance," I said quietly. "That was careful wording." Vivian's shoulders lifted slightly, then settled. It was the only wording they will tolerate without labeling me unstable. I moved closer, stopping short of the desk. The glass walls made it feel like we were on display even when the door was shut. "You think it is, Graham?" I said. Vivian's jaw tightened. "I know he knows people at Redwood Crown. I know he has a talent for getting access. And I know he is angry. That does not mean he has the skills to hack," I said. Vivian turned from the window. Her eyes were clear sharp. "He does not need skills. He needs someone else's hands." I pictured the way Graham's watch caught the light, the way he stood in the rain without an umbrella, like he did not believe weather applied to him. "You said he collects people," I murmured. Vivian nodded once. "He makes them feel chosen, then he makes them useful." The air in the office felt too dry. I swallowed. "Has he reached out again?" Vivian's gaze slid away for the first time. "Yes," she said. That single syllable carried hours. "What did he say?" I asked. "Nothing illegal," Vivian replied. "Nothing explicit. He wants me to respond. He wants me to engage. He wants me to feel watched." My fingers curled into my palm. "Do you have the messages?" Vivian hesitated, then opened a drawer and pulled out her phone. She did not hand it to me. She held it herself, scrolling, showing me the screen in brief flashes. Numbers with no names, short texts, requests framed like concern. A voicemail transcription that started with, "I just want to talk," and ended with, "You are making a mistake." Vivian's thumb hovered above the delete button. "I hate this," she said. "I know," I replied. She put the phone down and looked at me. "We have to be careful," she said again, like it was an anchor she kept returning to. "Yes," I said. Vivian's voice lowered further. "Diana is coming today. I want you in the first briefing." "Of course," I said. Her expression softened for a moment, and the softness looked like it cost her something. "Thank you." I nodded and reached for the door, then paused. "Do you want me to walk you to your car?" I asked. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly, and not at me, but at the idea. "I can handle a car." "I know," I said, "but do you want it?" Her gaze held mine. The subtext sat there plainly. Wanting help was not the same as needing it. Wanting was a choice. "Yes," she said finally. "After Diana." Diana Shaw arrived at 2 in the afternoon with a black laptop bag and an expression that suggested she had seen every kind of panic and did not have time for theatrics. She was in her 40s, hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes that scanned the room the way an editor scanned a draft for weak sentences. Vivian introduced us in her office. "Diana, this is Ethan Cole, senior editor. He handles the majority of our acquisitions pipeline." Diana shook my hand, grip firm. "Nice to meet you." Her voice was plain. Her gaze moved to Vivian. "Show me your access logs." Vivian did not bristle. She handed over what she had, and Diana immediately began asking questions that made my mind tighten with focus. Who had admin rights, where files were stored? Which devices had email access? What third-party apps were connected? Watching Vivian answer was strange. In meetings, she controlled the pace. With Diana, she offered facts and let someone else lead. It made her look tired in a way I had not noticed before. Diana listened, then nodded. "We start with the simplest breach," she said. "Human behavior, password reuse, forwarding, shared drives with lazy permissions. We lock those down today." Vivian's chin lifted. "And if it is not simple?" Diana's mouth barely moved. "Then it is still human. It is always human somewhere." She asked for copies of bid approval chains. She asked for email headers. She asked for device inventory. She did not say the word sabotage. She did not need to. Her questions built the shape of it. When Diana left to meet with IT, Vivian exhaled slowly. "She is efficient," she said. "She is not afraid of you," I replied before I could stop myself. Vivian's mouth twitched. "Good." I walked Vivian to her car at 6. The street outside the building was busy with commuters and taxis. Wind whipped between the buildings, lifting the edges of coats. Vivian's heels clicked on the pavement, steady and confident. To anyone watching, she looked like she always did. Only I noticed how her gaze checked reflections in windows, how her hand tightened around her bag strap, when a man in a dark coat stepped too close. At her car, she paused. "Thank you," she said. "You do not have to thank me," I replied. She looked at me with a hint of dry humor. "You keep saying that." I almost smiled. It is still true. Vivian's expression softened, then cooled again like a thermostat being turned down. "Good night, Ethan," she said, careful. "Good night," I said. She got and locked the doors immediately and drove away with controlled precision. 2 mornings later, Lila and I were leaving our building when she stopped on the stoop so abruptly I almost bumped into her. "Dad," she whispered. I followed her gaze across the street. A dark car sat at the curb, engine running. The driver's face was half hidden behind the frame of the window. A phone was held up near the steering wheel, angled toward our building. The lens caught the weak morning light and flashed once. My stomach dropped. The car rolled forward as soon as the driver noticed us looking. Tires whispered on pavement. It slipped into traffic and disappeared around the corner like it had never been there. Lila turned to me, eyes wide. Why was he taking pictures? I crouched in front of her, forcing my voice to stay even. "Sometimes people take pictures for the wrong reasons," I said. "Is it the seeker?" she asked, small voice tight. I swallowed. "I do not know." Lila's fingers tightened around her backpack strap, the penguin keychain bouncing once against the fabric. "I do not like that," she said. "I do not either," I replied. I walked her to school with my hand on her shoulder the whole way. She stayed close, scanning cars as if she had learned a new kind of game. At work, I waited until the floor had quieted. Then I went to Vivian's office and knocked. She looked up. "Come." I shut the door behind me. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "What happened?" I told her about the car, about the lens flash, about the way it pulled away the second it was noticed. Vivian's face drained of color so fast it startled me. She stood, hands gripping the edge of her desk. For a second, her composure was gone, and what remained was raw fear. "Ethan," she said, voice barely holding together, "I am so sorry." "This is not your fault," I said immediately. Vivian shook her head once sharp. "It is connected to me. It touches you because of me." "It touches us because he chose to cross lines," I said. My voice sounded rough, "not because you exist." Vivian stared at me like she was trying to accept the logic, and could not make her body believe it. She looked past me toward the glass wall, toward the busy hallway, where people walked by carrying coffee and files like the world was intact. "We should stop," she said suddenly. The words hit hard. "Stop," I repeated. Vivian's throat worked. "Cool off," she corrected, as if that made it less brutal. "Distance. Until this is handled." "And what do you think that does?" I asked, and keeping my voice low. "Does it make him stop?" Vivian flinched. "It might," she said, but the word might sounded like a prayer. I stepped closer. "Do you want to stop?" I asked. Vivian's eyes lifted to mine. They were bright, but she did not let the tears fall. "No," she said, honest and frightened. "But I am scared." "For yourself?" I asked. Vivian shook her head. "For Lila." The name came out soft, reverent, like she had already made space for my daughter inside her. I exhaled slowly, grounding myself. "Lila is my responsibility," I said. "And so is what I choose around her." Vivian's mouth tightened. "Then choose safety," she whispered. "I am choosing it," I replied. "I do not think separating makes her safer. I think it makes us easier to pick off." Vivian stared at me, breathing shallow. The room felt too bright, too exposed. I lowered my voice further. "We do this carefully," I said. "We listen to Diana. We tighten everything. We document everything. And we do not let him isolate you." Vivian's gaze held mine. The tension in her shoulders trembled, then eased a fraction. "You are sure," she said, and it was not a question about strategy. It was a question about her. I nodded once. "Yes." Vivian's eyes dropped to my hand hovering near her desk. I did not touch her. Not here. Not with the glass walls and the risk of being seen. Still, she seemed to feel the presence of it. She exhaled slowly, then nodded once, decisive. "Okay," she said. The word carried weight, agreement, trust, a line drawn. When I left her office, the hallway looked the same as it always did. People moved, phones rang, printers hummed. The normalcy felt almost insulting. At my desk, Mason glanced up and studied my face. He did not make a joke. He simply nodded once like he understood more than he said. I opened my laptop and forced myself back into the work in front of me. My fingers moved steadily on the keys. Outside the glass, the city looked cold and clean. Somewhere beyond the windows, cars moved through Boston streets, indistinguishable from each other until you looked too closely. Somewhere beyond the windows, cars moved through Boston streets, indistinguishable from each other until you looked too closely. I tried to keep my attention on the screen. The words in front of me were familiar, safe. A sentence could be fixed. A paragraph could be reshaped. You could not do that with a person sitting in a dark car watching your daughter's front steps. My phone vibrated once, then again. At first I ignored it. Then the third buzz came like an insistence. Mason's name lit up the screen. I answered quietly. "Yeah." "You need to get in here," he said. His voice had lost its usual humor. "Now." "What happened?" Mason exhaled hard. "Someone dumped emails. Vivian's emails. People are printing them. It is everywhere." My stomach tightened. "Dumped how?" "Like a leak," he said. "Screenshots, threads, board stuff. It makes it look like she is planning layoffs, selling divisions, cutting authors loose. The floor is losing its mind." I stood so fast my chair wheels squeaked. "I'm coming." The elevator ride up felt too slow. The mirrored walls showed my face pale and tight. When the doors opened, sound hit me first. Not shouting exactly, more like a building filled with bees. Voices layered over each other, printers running, someone crying near the copy room. The air smelled of burned coffee and fresh paper. Pages were taped to desks. Slack messages flashed on screens like emergency alerts. I caught a glimpse of an email header with Vivian's name in bold, then a sentence below it highlighted in yellow marker. A line taken out of a longer thread stripped of context dressed up as intent. Mason met me halfway down the aisle. He held a stack of printed pages in one hand like he had grabbed evidence from a crime scene. "They started coming in at 6, he said. Someone blasted them to staff and a couple of agents. Then they hit industry group chats. Now authors are calling their agents, and agents are calling us." I took the pages from him and scanned. The writing was Vivian's, clipped and direct, but the thread below told a different story. Her lines had been pulled out like teeth. "Worst case scenario, we prepare a divestment plan. If panic spreads, we reduce headcount." I heard a few people nearby arguing, voices sharp. She's been lying to us, someone said. She always looked like she hated everyone, another replied. She does not get to destroy the company and walk away. I folded the pages and handed them back to Mason. Where is she? Mason nodded toward the top floor. In her office. Door closed. Vivian's door being closed was enough to make the hallway feel wrong. I pushed through the glass and stepped inside. The room was quiet. The city beyond the windows looked too calm. The Charles moved in slow gray ripples, as if nothing in the building mattered. Vivian stood with her back to me, hands flat on the window ledge. Her shoulders were straight, but something about the set of her neck looked strained, like she was holding herself together by force. On her desk, her phone lay face down. Beside it was the paper boat. The edges had curled more, the ink fading into soft smudges. It looked smaller than I remembered. She spoke without turning. They are tearing it apart. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the thinness in it. I moved closer. Is it real? I asked. The emails. Vivian turned slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. They are real, she said. The lines are mine. The meaning is not. I nodded once. Worst-case planning. Yes. Vivian's mouth tightened. Strategy. Contingency. Things a CEO is supposed to consider so the company survives. They took it and made it sound like I was eager to burn the place down. I stepped toward her desk, keeping my voice low. How did someone get them? Vivian's jaw worked. Either my account was compromised or someone on the board forwarded them, she said. Then she added quieter, or both. I thought of Diana's voice. It is always human somewhere. What is happening downstairs? Vivian asked, though her gaze said she already knew. People are scared, I said. Some are angry. Agents are calling. Authors, too. Vivian closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them again, the Winter Queen was there, but she looked exhausted. Malcolm called, she said. Emergency board meeting, in an hour. My stomach dropped. Already. They will not let fear sit, Vivian replied. They will turn it into a decision. I watched her hands. She kept them folded now, fingers laced tight. No tremor, just pressure. We should go to the police, I said. Vivian gave a short, sharp laugh with no humor. With what? With screenshots and suspicion. Her gaze flicked to the glass wall, to the hallway beyond, where movement blurred. They will ask if I have proof. They will ask if I have a name. They will ask why a CEO let her email be hacked in the first place. I took a breath. Do you think it was Graham? Vivian's eyes flashed. Yes. One syllable. No hesitation. My jaw tightened. We should document everything. Every call. Every message. Every leak. Vivian's expression softened for half a second, then cooled again. I am doing what I can, she said. But the story is moving faster than facts. A knock landed on the door. Vivian's assistant stepped in, face pale. Ms. Hart. The phones are flooded. 2 senior editors asked for meetings. And the Patterson agent is on hold. They are asking if the rumors are true. Vivian's lips pressed together. Tell them I will speak to the agent in 10 minutes. And schedule the editors for this afternoon. Her assistant hesitated. One more thing. She lowered her voice. Cameron and Elise resigned. Effective immediately. The words hung in the air like smoke. Vivian's posture did not change, but I saw the impact in her eyes like a strike landing under armor. Thank you, Vivian said. Close the door. When we were alone again, the quiet felt brutal. 2 editors, I said. Vivian nodded once. Fear is contagious. I stepped closer, careful. You are not alone in this. Vivian's gaze found mine. There was something raw there, a flash of vulnerability that looked like it hurt to show. This was my mother's, she said. Her voice dipped. This company, this list. She built it with her hands. She knew every author, every printer, every bookstore owner who took a chance on us. When she died, I promised I would not let it become a carcass for investors to pick over. I swallowed. You have not. Vivian looked past me toward the boat on her desk. And now it looks like I am the one holding the knife. Downstairs, the floor kept buzzing. I could hear it through the glass, the energy of panic. Call the Patterson agent, I said. Vivian blinked. What? Let me, I said. If you call, they will hear CEO voice. They will hear corporate spin. Let me speak as the editor who wants the book. I can calm them. Vivian studied me for a beat. Then she nodded. Do it. I took the call at my desk. The agent's voice came sharp and wary. Ethan, she said, tell me this is not true. It is not, I replied. Those emails were contingency planning, not a plan, not intent. Vivian is addressing it now. Your board is rattled, the agent said. My author is rattled. Redwood Crown already called. They offered stability. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them and kept my voice steady. Harbor and Hart can offer stability too, I said. We have the team, the marketing, the editorial care. Vivian is not abandoning anything. The agent paused. Can you guarantee it? I tasted the word guarantee like metal. I can tell you this, I said. I have sat in every acquisition meeting for months. Vivian fights for books, hard. She is not the person these screenshots are trying to sell you. Another pause. The agent's breath softened. All right, she said finally. I will hold for 24 hours, but I need to hear something concrete. Fair, I said. You will. When I hung up, my hands were cold. Mason watched me from across his desk. How bad, he asked. Bad, I said. He nodded once, then looked away. 2 resignations, he murmured. I heard someone in production is talking about leaving too. The hour before the board meeting moved like a fever dream. Vivian gathered facts. It scrambled through logs. Diana arrived and disappeared into a conference room with the head of tech. People whispered in clusters. Someone pushed a cart of boxes down the hall, head down, shoulders hunched. At 11:30, Vivian walked out of her office and headed for the elevators. She looked like herself again, composed and controlled. Only I noticed how her fingers curled into her palm before she stepped into the elevator. I went with her. The doors closed. For a few seconds we stood alone in the mirrored box, our reflections staring back. Vivian kept her eyes forward. Do not speak in there unless you are asked, she said quietly. I know, I replied. Her gaze flicked to mine in the reflection. And Ethan. Yes, her throat worked. If they push for blood, they will not care about truth. I felt my chest tighten. Then we hold the line, I said. Vivian's lips pressed together, then softened slightly. Yes, she said. The elevator opened onto the top floor. The boardroom waited, glass walls, gleaming chairs lined up like judgment. Malcolm Price was already there, along with the same board members from Thursday, and 2 more I did not recognize faces. Tight eyes, alert. Laptops were open. Printed screenshots lay on the table like accusations. Vivian walked to her seat and sat. I took my place down the table. Malcolm did not waste time. Vivian, he said, tapping the printed pages with one finger, explain. Vivian's voice was steady. These are emails discussing contingency planning, she said. They were taken out of context and distributed to create panic. A board member leaned forward. Are you saying they are fake? I am saying the interpretation is false, Vivian replied. The threads are incomplete. The timing and distribution indicate malicious intent. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. And who has malicious intent? Vivian paused for half a beat. Someone with access to internal communications, she said, or someone who gained access unlawfully. The woman with the scarf frowned. Your email security failed. Yes, Vivian said. Or someone inside forwarded them. We are investigating. Diana Shaw is conducting a forensic review. Malcolm tapped the pages again. This has already reached agents, authors, staff. Our stock dipped this morning. Vivian did not flinch. Then we respond quickly with transparency. A board member scoffed. Transparency, that would be new. The sentence landed. Vivian's expression tightened, but her voice remained even. You are correct, she said. I should have alerted you earlier when I suspected outside interference. I did not have proof. I chose caution. It was not enough. Silence followed, sharp and uncomfortable. Malcolm leaned back. You are telling us you have an enemy, he said. You have no proof of who it is. And in the meantime, we are bleeding talent and trust. Vivian's hands stayed still on the table. I am telling you we are under attack, she said, and the attacker wanted this reaction. Malcolm's gaze flicked to the window, then back. Our duty is to the company, he said, not to your narrative. Vivian's eyes did not widen. She held his gaze. My duty is the same. The board member beside Malcolm spoke quietly, almost kindly. Vivian, investors will not tolerate instability. Authors will not tolerate uncertainty. Staff will not tolerate fear. This leak makes you look like the source of the instability. Vivian's jaw tightened, because someone wants it to. Malcolm leaned forward again. His voice lowered. We have lost confidence in your ability to contain this. The words hit the room like a door slamming. I felt my hands curl under the table. I kept my face still. Vivian took a slow breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but it carried something new, something edged and honest. You are offering me resignation, she said. Malcolm did not deny it. Gracefully, he replied, before we are forced to take further action. Vivian's eyes stayed on him. Her shoulders did not sag. Her chin did not drop. But I saw the cost in the tightness around her mouth, the way she held herself still to prevent fracture. I request 24 hours, Vivian said. Malcolm's brows lifted. For what purpose? To stabilize messaging, retain key authors, and present preliminary findings from the security review, Vivian replied. If, after that, you still believe I am the liability, I will step aside." A murmur moved around the table. Malcolm exchanged looks with the others, then nodded once, reluctant. 24 hours, he said, no more. Vivian inclined her head, understood. The meeting adjourned with clipped goodbyes and the sound of chairs scraping back. Board members filed out in pairs, speaking under their breath. The glass walls reflected their movements like ghosts. Vivian stayed seated until the last one left. Then her shoulders shifted slightly, a release so small it might have been imagined. I did not speak. I waited. Vivian finally stood, gathered her folder, and walked toward the door with the same careful control she used in every public space. When she reached the hallway, she stopped for a brief moment as if the bright normal office light was too much. She turned her head just enough to look at me. Her eyes were clear, but the skin beneath them looked tired. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Yes." "Come with me," she said. I followed. Vivian did not go back to her office. She turned down a quieter hallway and opened the door to a small conference room that rarely got used. The lights inside were off. She left them that way at first, standing in the dim with one hand on the back of a chair, breathing as if she had been running. The city outside the narrow window looked too calm. People crossed the street below with coffee cups, coats pulled tight, heads down against the cold. It made the glass tower feel like a different climate, one where panic could bloom without anyone on the sidewalk noticing. Vivian finally reached for the switch. Fluorescent light filled the room, flattening everything. Her face stayed composed, but her eyes were tired in a way that no board meeting could hide. "They gave me a day," she said. "They gave the company a day," I replied. Her mouth tightened at the correction, but she did not argue. She sank into a chair and placed both palms flat on the table, as if anchoring herself. "I hate needing to ask," she said quietly. "You did not ask," I said. "You demanded time." Vivian let out a thin breath that might have been a laugh if she had enough air for it. "Time is a currency I usually control, and now I said someone is spending it for you." Her eyes lifted. The look she gave me was sharp with agreement, and underneath it was something more fragile. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered for a second, then moved with decision. "I am calling Diana." She put the call on speaker. The ring sounded too loud in the small room. Diana answered on the second ring. "Shaw." "It is Vivian," Vivian said. "I need whatever you have, now." A pause. A faint sound of keyboard clicks in the background. "I have a direction," Diana replied. "Not a full story. Yet." "I do not have yet," Vivian said. "I know," Diana said. "No sympathy, no softness, just fact. Meet me in your office in 15. Vivian ended the call and stared at the blank screen for a moment. The motion was still, but her fingers were tight around the phone. I leaned forward slightly. "We need more than the security piece," I said. "We need stabilization." Vivian's gaze snapped to mine. "I know. Staff is spooked," I continued. "Agents are spooked. They need to hear a voice that does not sound like spin." Vivian's jaw flexed. "If I sound emotional, they will call it weakness. If you sound silent, they will call it guilt," I said. She held my gaze for a beat. Then she nodded once. "Draft something," she said, "for internal." "For you to send," I clarified. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Yes, for me to send." We moved fast after that. In her office, the floor-to-ceiling window made everything feel exposed, but there was no time to care. Vivian sat at her desk and opened a blank document. I sat in the chair across from her with my laptop and started building sentences that were short, clean, and honest without being messy. We kept it simple. The emails were real. The framing was false. A forensic review was underway. Leadership was stable. No layoffs were planned. Questions would be answered in an all-staff meeting at 4. Vivian read each line, editing my edits the way she always did, cutting adjectives, sharpening verbs. It was familiar, almost comforting, until I noticed her hand tremble slightly as she hit send. The message went out. The building exhaled just a little. The buzzing did not stop, but it changed pitch. People began to gather around screens, reading forwarding, asking quieter questions instead of loud ones. At 3, Diana arrived. She walked in without knocking, as if doors were suggestions. Her laptop bag hit the floor beside Vivian's desk. She opened her computer and turned the screen so Vivian could see. "I found an email rule," Diana said. "A forwarding rule. Hidden. It was created from Vivian's account." Vivian's face went still. "I did not create it." "I know," Diana replied. "It forwards certain board threads and acquisition keywords to an outside address. It deletes the forward confirmation, clean enough that a casual audit misses it." My stomach tightened. "How long?" 5 weeks, Diana said. "Matches your bid losses." Vivian's eyes sharpened. "Where does it forward?" Diana tapped. An address appeared meaningless at first glance, a string of letters that looked like it belonged to no one. Diana continued. The address is hosted through a privacy shell, but the login to access that mailbox came from 2 locations repeatedly. One is a coffee shop near Redwood Crown's Cambridge office. The other is a private residential network in Back Bay. Vivian's fingers curled around the edge of her desk. Back Bay. Diana nodded. And there is more. The initial login that created the forwarding rule did not come from Vivian's usual devices. It came from a device that touched your network before. Vivian's gaze flicked to me, then back to Diana, before she said, Diana's eyes did not soften. When you were dating your problem. Vivian's throat worked. She did not correct the label. Diana slid a printed page across the desk. This is not proof in a criminal court. Not yet. But it is a pattern. And patterns persuade boards when money is bleeding. Vivian stared at the paper. For a second the armor slipped, and I saw the woman from the park, wet hair, bare feet, fear held in her throat. Diana closed her laptop partway. I also pulled comms that show your former boyfriend has been in contact with Derek Vale. My jaw tightened. Derek Vale was Redwood Crown's CEO, the kind of man who smiled at conferences and made offers that were really ultimatums. Vivian's eyes narrowed. How? Diana slid another page forward. Calendar metadata, a meeting invite that was deleted but not fully erased, and a phone record from a carrier disclosure. He called Derek twice in the last month. Short calls, both after your public appearances. Vivian's fingers pressed hard into the paper. He is not just watching, she said. No, I replied. He is steering. Vivian shut her eyes for a beat, then opened them. Do we have anything that ties him to the email breach directly? She asked. Diana's expression stayed flat. Not with his fingerprints, with his shadow. I can show that the same outside mailbox received forwarded threads and that it was accessed from a residential network that matches an address connected to him. That is stronger than suspicion, weaker than a handcuff. Vivian's gaze moved to the window, then back. It has to be enough. Diana looked at her. Then you need one more piece, she said. A human piece. Vivian's chin lifted. Who? Diana hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. A contractor, she said. A junior IT temp who worked briefly at Redwood Crown. Name is Noah Tran. He touched email systems there. He also has a record of buying access tools online. He is not the mastermind. He is the hands. I leaned forward. Will he talk? Diana's mouth tightened. He is scared. Vivian's laugh came out sharp. So am I. Diana did not react. Fear is useful, she said. It makes people choose sides when they cannot pretend neutrality. Vivian stared at the folder. Can you get him into a room? I can, Diana said, but you need to decide what you are asking him to do. Vivian's eyes lifted to mine. There was a question there not about strategy, about cost. I answered quietly. We ask him to tell the truth. We do not ask him to be brave for free. Vivian nodded, once grateful or resigned, I could not tell. At 4, Vivian held the staff meeting. We stood in the large open space near the editorial bullpen. People gathered with crossed arms, tired faces, eyes that flicked to phones and back. Rumors had already done damage. Vivian stepped up to the front and faced them without notes. She did not apologize for being a CEO. She did not plead. She told the truth with clean edges. The emails were weaponized. The company was under attack. A security review was underway. No divisions were being sold. No layoffs were planned. Anyone with concerns would have a channel to raise them. Anyone with information would have a protected way to report it. People listened. Some believed, some did not. But the room calmed enough that it did not feel like it would collapse. Afterward, Vivian returned to her office and shut the door. She stood with her back against it for a moment, eyes closed. Your hands are shaking, I said softly. Vivian opened her eyes. They are not, she replied automatically. I did not argue. I simply stepped closer and placed my hand over hers, where it rested on the doorframe. The contact was brief, grounding. Vivian's breath caught, then released. I cannot lose this, she said. Her voice was low, but the words were heavy. Not like this. Not because I let the wrong man into my life. You did not invite sabotage, I said. You ended it. That is what he cannot forgive. Vivian's eyes lifted bright with restrained emotion. He will not stop. I know, I said. Her gaze flicked away, and now Lila is in it. My chest tightened. She is not a target, I said, though my voice lacked certainty. Vivian's expression hardened. She is connected to you. You are connected to me. He knows how to pull threads. I thought of the car, the lens flash, Lila's small voice asking why someone would take pictures. I reached for my phone. I am going to call Mrs. Alvarez, I said. Vivian watched me. To pick her up. To keep her inside, I replied. And then I'm going to get her. I do not want her walking out of school into a street we do not control. Vivian nodded once, decision made. Bring her to my place, she said. I paused. Vivian? Her eyes held mine. My building has a doorman, she said. Cameras, a locked vestibule. It is safer than a walk-up with a loose buzzer. I did not like needing the calculation, but she was right. I called Mrs. Alvarez and kept my voice steady. I did not tell her everything. I told her enough. She agreed without questions and promised to stay with Lila until I arrived. When I got to Mrs. Alvarez's apartment, Lila was coloring at the kitchen table. Again, penguin keychain bouncing as she moved her pencil. She looked up and smiled, then saw my face and stopped. Dad, she whispered, are you mad at the air? I crouched beside her. Not mad, I said, just busy. Lila studied me like she always did. Then she nodded. Okay. Mrs. Alvarez pressed a small container of cookies into my hand. For later, she said. Her eyes were sharp with worry. Be careful. I will, I replied. Lila put on her coat and slipped her hand into mine. On the street, I kept my head on a swivel. Every dark car looked suspicious. Every slow turn of a wheel made my stomach tighten. At Beacon Hill, the doorman nodded as we entered. Vivian met us at her door, hair-down sweater on the CEO mask hanging somewhere outside the room. Lila stepped inside and immediately checked the entry table. The boat is still here, she announced. It is, Vivian said, and her voice warmed on the words. We settled Lila on the couch with a blanket and the secret garden. Vivian read the first page to her voice, gentle, steady, letting the cadence soothe the room. Lila's eyelids drooped. Her fingers loosened on the book. When Lila finally fell asleep, the quiet that followed felt different, heavier, like the house itself knew we were holding our breath. Vivian led us to the dining table. It was covered in papers, printed logs, Diana's folders, and 2 laptops open to spreadsheets and timelines. A pot of coffee sat cooling beside a plate of untouched bread. Diana arrived at 9 with more printouts and a phone that kept buzzing. She set everything down with efficient movements and looked at Vivian. Noah agreed to meet, Diana said. He will not come here. He wants public, a hotel lobby near the airport. He wants anonymity. He wants his name protected. Vivian's jaw tightened. If he testifies, he will not get anonymity. He knows, Diana said. That is why he is shaking. He still agreed. Vivian stared at the folder as if it might explode. Then she looked at me. I do not want you in this, she said quietly. I answered before she could build a wall. I am already in it. Her eyes glistened, then hardened again. Ethan, I am not leaving you alone with this, I said. My voice stayed calm, but it carried steel. And I am not leaving Lila unprotected. If that means I sit at this table all night, then I sit. Vivian's throat worked. She looked down at her hands, then reached across the table and took mine. Her fingers were warm and tight, like she was holding onto a railing again. Diana watched the gesture without comment. She simply slid a stack of pages toward Vivian. These are your key points, she said. This is the story that matches facts. Keep it short. Keep it clean. Vivian pulled her hand back reluctantly and began reading. I watched her eyes move across the lines, saw the shift as she turned information into strategy, fear into structure. We worked for hours. We built a timeline. The day the forwarding rule was created, the day's bids were leaked, the calls to Derek Vale, the login locations, the screenshots circulating at dawn. We printed copies. We highlighted key lines. We placed evidence in an order that told a story without needing drama. Around midnight, Vivian stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. The bricks looked almost black. A thin mist clung to the lamps. She spoke without turning. I hate that she is sleeping in there, she said. I followed her gaze toward the living room. Lila was curled under the blanket hair across her forehead, mouth slightly open, peaceful, unaware. She is safe, I said. Vivian's voice dipped. For now. I stepped closer, careful. Vivian, I said. She turned. Her eyes were full, but she did not let the tears fall. I am tired of being strong, she admitted barely above a whisper. I nodded. Then do not be strong for a minute. Her shoulders shook once. She pressed her fingers to her lips as if holding herself in. I took her hands gently just for a moment, feeling the tension in her knuckles. I have you, I said quietly. Vivian's eyes closed for a beat. When she opened them, her gaze held mine with raw gratitude. She nodded once, small and honest. At the table, Diana cleared her throat. We are close, she said. Packets are ready, talking points are ready, and Noah is scheduled. Vivian returned to the chair and straightened the papers into a neat stack. The motion was precise, familiar. control rebuilt piece by piece. She glanced toward the entryway. An umbrella stood in the ceramic bowl with the other's handle turned outward, easy to grab. Beside it on the entry table, the paper boat sat like a quiet witness. Vivian looked back at the stack of evidence, then at me. "All right," she said. I nodded. "All right." We set the folders in a clean pile at the edge of the table, close enough to carry, heavy enough to matter. By the time dawn thinned the sky into a pale sheet of gray, the coffee had gone cold, and no one bothered to replace it. Diana stood at the counter, with her phone pressed to her ear, listening eyes narrowed. Vivian sat at the table, with her hands folded still as stone. I watched the rise and fall of her breath, and tried to match it slow and steady, like that could keep the day from splintering. Lila woke just after 7, padding into the living room, in socked feet hair sticking up. She rubbed her eyes and blinked at the papers. "Is this work?" she asked. "It is," I said gently. She looked toward Vivian, then walked over and leaned into her side without asking permission. Vivian's body went rigid for a second, then softened. Her hand lifted and rested on Lila's back light as a promise. "I want pancakes," Lila announced. Vivian's mouth twitched. "I can make pancakes." Lila looked impressed. "Okay." Vivian stood and moved through the kitchen like she had decided the small, normal thing mattered. The batter sizzled on the pan. The smell of butter filled the townhouse. Lila sat on a stool and narrated each step with the seriousness of a sports commentator. Vivian listened as if it helped. Diana returned to the table and slid her phone into her pocket. "Noah is on his way," she said. Vivian flipped one pancake, calm and precise. "Good." Diana's gaze moved to me. "Board is 9. "I know," I said. Vivian set a plate in front of Lila. "Eat," she told her. Lila took one bite, cheeks puffing. "This is very good," she said with approval. Vivian's eyes softened. "Thank you." At 8:15, Vivian pulled on a coat and smoothed her hair into a twist. I helped Lila into her jacket and handed her backpack over. The penguin keychain bounced against the fabric. Vivian crouched to Lila's height. "Ms. Hart has to go to a meeting," I said. "You are going to Mrs. Alvarez's." Lila frowned. "I want to stay." Vivian looked at her, voice gentle but firm. "I want you to be safe." Lila's mouth tightened. She nodded once, unhappy but understanding. Vivian reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the paper boat. Its edges were curled, ink faded, but it still held its shape. "You can hold it for a while," Vivian said. Lila's eyes widened, as if she had been handed a trophy. She took it carefully. "It does not sink," she whispered. Vivian's gaze flicked to mine. "Neither do you," she said to Lila. Lila tucked the boat into the top pocket of her backpack like it belonged there. Then she leaned forward and hugged Vivian around the waist. Vivian stiffened again, then hugged back, careful and real. I drove Lila to Mrs. Alvarez's and walked her inside. Mrs. Alvarez looked at my face and said nothing. Just drew Lila close and kissed her forehead. Lila waved at me with the solemn weight of a child who knew adults were holding something heavy. At Harbor and Hart, the lobby felt too bright. The doorman nodded. The elevator doors closed. Vivian stood beside me, hands clasped. Diana stood on her other side, laptop bag on her shoulder like a weapon. "You ready?" I asked quietly. Vivian did not look at me. "I am," she said. The words were steady. Her voice was not. The boardroom smelled like coffee and toner. Malcolm Price sat at the head of the table, face unreadable. 2 board members whispered to each other and fell silent when Vivian entered. Screens were already up. Printed packets lay at every seat like an accusation waiting to be opened. Vivian took her place. I sat down the table. Diana stood near the wall, arms folded, watching everything. Malcolm spoke first. "We have 24 hours worth of damage," he said. "Bring us something that fixes it." Vivian slid Diana's packet onto the table. "I have facts," she said, "and a pattern." She spoke cleanly. The hidden forwarding rule, the outside mailbox, the login locations, the timing of the bid losses. She did not say Graham's name. She did not need to yet. She kept her face composed as she turned fear into structure. Malcolm skimmed the pages, eyes moving quickly. "This shows breach," he said. "It does not show who." Diana stepped forward. "It shows an access path that aligns with a specific individual's proximity and motive," she said. Malcolm's gaze sharpened. "Motive." Vivian's voice stayed level. "A personal grievance." A board member scoffed. "We are not turning this into tabloid." Vivian did not flinch. "We are turning it into accountability." The door opened. A young man stepped in, shoulders, hunched, eyes darting. He wore a hoodie under a coat as if he had tried to dress for invisibility and failed. Diana motioned him forward. "This is Noah Tran," Diana said. "Former contract IT at Redwood Crown." Noah swallowed hard. "I did not want to come," he said. His voice shook. They said they would ruin me. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Who? Noah's gaze flicked to Vivian, then away. Graham Kincaid, he said, and Derek Vale's office. The name landed in the room with a dull thud. Vivian's posture stayed straight, but her hand tightened on the edge of the table. I saw her knuckles pale. Noah cleared his throat. Graham paid me, he said. Not in a way that looks like pay. Gift cards, cash. He told me Vivian was unstable, that she was going to destroy the company and take everyone down with her. He said I could stop it. A board member leaned forward. Stop it how? Noah's eyes squeezed shut for a second. I created a forwarding rule, he said. It sent certain emails to a mailbox Derek's people could access. I was told it was just for monitoring to protect investors. His breath hitched. Then they told me to pull board threads and send screenshots to a list. Malcolm's face did not change, but the air did. Less skeptical, more sharp. Vivian's voice stayed calm. Do you have proof of instruction? She asked. Noah nodded quickly. Texts, he said. I saved them. I was scared. I saved everything. Diana held up her phone. We already have copies, she said. A movement at the door interrupted the moment. A man stepped in as if he belonged. Dark suit, perfect hair. A watch that caught the light. Graham Kincaid. He smiled like he was arriving for applause. I believe I can clarify, he said. Vivian's face went still. It was not fear that crossed it this time. It was recognition, sharp and cold. Malcolm stood halfway. This is a private meeting. Graham kept walking unbothered. He set a flash drive on the table with 2 fingers. That is precisely why you should hear me, he said. His gaze slid to Vivian. Before she lies again. Vivian's voice cut through. You should leave. Graham's smile widened thin. You always loved telling me what to do. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Mr. Kincaid, you are not on the agenda. Graham tapped the flash drive. This contains evidence that Vivian Hart has been deliberately sabotaging Harbor and Hart to drive down its value before a management buyout, he said. She planned to sell Division's cut staff and blame a phantom attacker. The room went quiet in the way it does right before something breaks. Vivian stood, her chair scraped softly. She placed both palms on the table and leaned in just slightly, not pleading, not shouting, simply present. That is an interesting accusation, she said, from the man who paid an IT contractor to hack my account and feed our bids to Redwood Crown. Graham's eyes flicked just once toward Noah. The smile held, but it faltered at the edges. That is absurd, Graham said. Vivian nodded toward Diana. Diana slid a set of printed screenshots across to Malcolm. Payment logs, she said. Text instructions, timestamps. Noah's statements corroborate the access trail. Malcolm's gaze moved over the pages. The board members began flipping through, murmuring the sound low and urgent. Graham's jaw tightened. This is desperation, he said. She is trying to save her job. Vivian's eyes stayed on him. I am trying to save my company, she replied, and my staff, and the authors who trusted us. I made mistakes. I should have told the board sooner that I was being harassed. I should have tightened my security faster, but I never betrayed this company. Graham laughed once bitter. All this for a man, he said, eyes cutting to me. You left me for your employee. Vivian did not glance at me. She did not need to. My personal life is not the issue, she said. Your criminal behavior is... Noah flinched. Graham's attention snapped back to him. You, he said, voice low and sharp. After everything. Noah's voice cracked. You told me you would protect me, he said. You told me she was the villain. Graham's composure slipped. You are nothing, he spat at Vivian. You think this makes you wanted. You think anyone will stay when they see you bleed. The boardroom felt suddenly small. Diana nodded toward the door. 2 security guards appeared, firm hands already reaching. Mr. Kincaid, and Malcolm said, voice clipped, you are done here. Graham jerked his arm away as security took him. His eyes locked on Vivian. For a moment, the charm was gone, and only obsession remained. Then he was pulled toward the door, his shoes scraping once on the polished floor. Vivian did not move until the door closed. When it did, her shoulders lowered a fraction. She drew one slow breath, then sat. Malcolm looked down the table. We will consult counsel, he said. We will coordinate with law enforcement, and we will correct the public narrative. He paused, eyes on Vivian. Your position remains, he said, but you will rebuild trust, starting today. Vivian nodded once. I will. When the meeting ended, the board members left in tight clusters, already drafting statements, already calculating damage control. Noah stood near the wall, shaking. Diana spoke to him quietly and walked him out. Vivian stayed behind for a moment, staring at the empty chair where Graham had stood. Then she turned to the window. The Charles moved below, indifferent and steady. I stepped closer, careful. You did it, I said softly. Vivian's mouth curved, tired. We did, she corrected. Outside the building, the air was cold and clean. Vivian and I stood on the steps for a moment, neither of us moving toward our separate lives yet. My mother used to say stability is not the absence of storms, Vivian said. Her voice was quiet. It is knowing where you stand when they hit. I nodded. Where do you stand? Vivian looked at me, eyes clear. Here, she said. 6 months later, Harbor and Hart looked different. The glass walls were still there, but people did not whisper as much. Meetings had more voices in them. Vivian still demanded excellence, but she did not use fear as a tool. The acquisitions list recovered. Agents returned calls. Authors stopped asking if rumors were true and started asking when marketing would launch. On a Friday evening, Lila and I built a pillow fort in the living room, while Vivian flipped pancakes in our small kitchen. The apartment smelled like butter and sugar. Lila wore her paper crown again, slightly bent. Is Vivian staying forever? Lila asked, mouth full. Vivian glanced at me over the pan. Her eyes held a question, gentle and real. I crouched beside Lila. Would you like that? I asked. Lila nodded hard. She reads voices, she said, and she makes you look less mad at the air. Vivian laughed, soft and surprised. She set a plate down and sat beside us on the floor, careful not to crush the fort wall. Later, when Lila fell asleep under the blanket pile, Vivian and I sat on the couch with the apartment quiet around us. The city lights filtered in through the blinds, thin stripes across her face. I do not want to be the complication, Vivian said. I reached for her hand. You are the part that makes sense, I replied. Her throat tightened. Are you sure? I watched her fingers, the faint ink stain near her thumb from signing contracts all day, the small scar on her knuckle I had never asked about. I thought of rain on a park bench, an umbrella tilted to cover 3 people at once, a paper boat that refused to sink. Yes, I said. Vivian's eyes shone. She leaned in and kissed me, slow and steady like a decision. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.